Welcome back to Creative Excuses. Today we've got something really exciting. We're going to go over the notes for my overhaul mod, Baldur's Gate 3 Chocolate Edition version 4. We're going to go through everything, even though I've done a lot of it before, because we need to. I didn't do one of these videos for version 3. That was a mistake, but they take a lot of time, so I'm sorry. So here we go. Let's go over all of the big changes. But before that, thanks to everyone for supporting the channel, either with a $1 membership or a $4 membership, or through supporting the mod itself over on the Ko-fi page, which you can find a link to in the description. I've been fundraising for version 4. I didn't finish raising the amount that I thought I was going to, but that's not because people weren't generous enough. People were plenty generous. It's because I got impatient and I really wanted to make the mod. So here we go. Thank you everyone for supporting. If you want to support, you can find the links in the description. Let's jump into it. So version 4 is coming out probably this week. There's probably going to be a few bugs. I will fix them as they come up. Let's go. Here's the new table of contents. We have 71 pages, except this is obviously the first page of the last section, which is like 10 pages long. I think the entire PDF is now 83 pages of notes. So this is going to take a while. So what is Chocolate Edition? It is a massive rebalance mod that touches so much of the game that I just couldn't call it a Vanilla Plus experience. It is more than a Vanilla Plus experience. It does everything. It adds origin-specific classes for the origin characters. It adds class adjustments. It makes class adjustments. It rebalances a ton of spells. It rebalances and adds feats. And now it rebalances and adds a ton of items. So it's Chocolate Edition. We're going to skip the recommended mods. I could probably overhaul this page. There are some specific mods that I love using that I probably want to recommend. But for that, I'll probably make a an official Chocolate Edition mod list. I think that would be fun. Okay, so the first major change for Baldur's Gate 3 Chocolate Edition is one of the ones that you're going to notice and not notice at the same time, and it is called the Intelligent Initiative System. Basically, you're going to add your intelligence modifier to your initiative rolls. This also means if you dump your intelligence, you're going to take an intelligence penalty to your initiative rolls. That is limited to -1 so that like animals and stuff that you fight don't have a really low initiative, but that's basically the system. So initiative for players is now 1d8 plus your dexterity modifier plus your intelligence modifier. If you are below tactician difficulty, enemies and summons only get 1d8 plus dexterity. But if you are on tactician and above, enemies will also add their intelligence modifier. Additionally, you're going to see that alert changes in the feats section, but to preview it, alert is now a +1 to initiative and gives you an extra reaction, which is a wildly powerful feat, but some people really want it to go first, so they don't like that change. But I'm sorry, I think this is healthier. You end up with more variance in this system and a more balanced stat spread, but you don't end up with so much variance that it's a 1d20 system, and just initiative feels like it's a much less valuable resource to stack. Let's keep going. There is another major system change, and this is a completely new one for Chocolate Edition version 4. This is called the Martial Prowess system. Now, Martial Prowess is essentially a martial equivalent to the spellcaster level system. So you know how you can take like 1 level of wizard and 1 level of druid and 1 level of cleric, and you still end up being a level 3 spellcaster. So you end up with level 2 spell slots. You didn't learn level 2 spells, but you do have the slots to upcast your level 1 spells. Well, the same sort of system is being done here. When you level up a full martial, a half martial, or a 1/3 martial character, you gain varying points of martial prowess and related abilities based on this chart that you see here. So full martials get 1 martial prowess per level, and at level 2, they're going to gain +1 AC. This is essentially the defense fighting style, which I have disabled for Chocolate Edition version 4, so you can no longer pick the defense fighting style from Paladin or Ranger or Fighter or whatever, right? But you do still get +1 AC just from being a level 2 martial character. At 5 martial prowess, you unlock your extra attack. So this is no longer limited to just being 5 levels of fighter, you get extra attack. Now you can take 3 levels of fighter and 2 levels of barbarian, and you're still going to get your extra attack. That's the beauty of this system. You can now multi-class without delaying your extra attack power spike. To continue on in the system, level 8, you get At martial level 8, you're going to get +1 weapon damage, and at martial level 11, you're going to get +1 attack rolls. Now, these are not the same level of power or anywhere near the same level of power as gaining 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th level spell slots, right? Extra attack is about the equivalent of getting some of those, and as you stack riders and things, you end up with more damage, and you are the equivalent of a level 6 caster still. You're still going to end up just as powerful, which is why these bonuses are good, but they're not like god tier. I'm not trying to break martial characters into a whole new stratosphere of power. I think in Baldur's Gate, they're pretty close to casters. This just allows you to have some of the quality of life of being able to multi-class and create new and interesting characters. So that's full martials. At level 2, 5, 8, and 11, you gain a bonus. Level 5 is the big one, of course, where you gain your extra attack. Now, there are half martial characters, and these are characters that are going to add martial prowess at every odd level. So they're going to gain martial prowess at level 1, at level 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11 in Baldur's Gate 3's 12-level system. Okay? 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. So when they hit 2 martial prowess at character level 3, or subclass level 3 rather, they are going to gain +1 armor class. And at 5, which is level 9, they're going to gain extra attack. These classes are Assassin Rogues, College of Swords Bards, and College of Valor Bards. So Assassin Rogues typically don't have extra attack. In Chocolate Edition version 3 and below, they did have extra attack at level 6, but I've moved that now to level 9 to line up with this martial prowess system, but in return they're also going to gain +1 AC as soon as they get their subclass at level 3. This is of course a huge nerf to College of Swords Bard and College of Valor Bard, and since they typically get a subclass feature at level 6, which for them was extra attack, they've now received a subclass feature there instead. I should note that fighters also receive a class feature here at level 5 instead of extra attack because extra attack was the only thing they got. Anyway, I've taken care to make sure that these classes still get something. We'll go over that when we go over the class changes later on. But they're going to get extra attack at level 5. So this is 3 levels later than College of Swords and College of Valor Bard would have gotten before. However, they can take 3 levels, or maybe 5 levels. Now they're at 3. And then they can take 2 levels of Fighter, or 2 levels of Paladin, or Ranger, or Monk, or Barbarian, or whatever. And they can get it at level 7, which is only a single level behind where they would have before. So you can multi-class Swords Bard and Valor Bard to end up with pretty comparable power in the same area of the game. It's just level 7 instead of level 6. Now, 1/3 martials, these are characters and subclasses that gain 1 martial prowess every even level. So they gain martial prowess at levels 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. So they're going to be 1 level behind the half martials. So they gain their +1 AC at level 4, and they gain their extra attack at level 10, which is significantly different than getting at 9. Getting to 10 means you're probably not going to have it for the Merkle fight unless you're using double XP mods, extra encounters, and doing a lot of encounters, or you just min-max XP quite heavily. I usually end up at Merkle between levels 8 and 9. So you just wouldn't get this until roughly Act 3. Now, these subclasses that gain martial prowess as 3rd martials are Blade Singer Wizards, we'll talk about that in a second, Circle of Spores Druids, Death Domain Clerics, Tempest Domain Clerics, and War Domain Clerics. Now, the reason I chose these clerics is they all end up with martial weapon proficiency, and I think Tempest and War Domain also have heavy armor proficiency. I don't think Death Domain does. That just makes these more martial flavored clerics, and because they don't get extra attack until level 10, it's not a huge power spike because they are probably going to want to build kind of spellcastery, and then you either rework your build to make it an extra attack build, or you can do some multi-class shenanigans with it. It does boost their power in the late game, but because they already have a level 6 spells, they probably already have something better to do with their action than just attack, so it's kind of a wash. They do get more powerful, of course, but I don't think they beat out any of the full martials. Hopefully. Circle of Spores Druids, these are not typically, they don't typically have anything that looks like a martial feature, except they get to deal extra weapon damage with their symbiotic entity. So I made them a more martial focused druid. So they're going to gain extra attack at level 10 as well. This extra attack, it should be noted, does not work while in wild shape form. So Circle of Spores druids will have their regular wild strike extra attacks at level 5, and I think 11 they get a third one. But then they'll have, outside of wild shape form, they will also have extra attack with, just their hands or shillelagh'd weapons or whatever. Now, finally, Bladesinger Wizard. They're, of course, the martial wizard class, and their extra attack's been moved to level 10 instead of level 6, and that's a huge change. Huge change. In return, though, they've had their Song of Defense from level 10 moved to level 6. So now their hallmark giant power spike, like most wizards get a big power spike at level 10, they now get their power spike at level 10 as well. And Song of Defense, they get to be really tanky at level 6, which is pretty good. But they also gained another bonus. Their extra attack, as we're going to see in the class changes later on, is not just 2 weapon attacks. It is actually a cantrip attack and a weapon attack. They can do both things, a cantrip and a weapon attack in one turn, using just their extra attack. Or they can attack twice with a weapon. So that's pretty much it. So here's some examples. 2 fighter plus 3 barbarian equals 5 martial prowess, and that means you get extra attack. Cool. Let's go to the next page. 1 fighter plus 8 Tempest Domain Cleric also equals 5 martial prowess, unlocking extra attack. And plus 1 AC by level 9. 3 Assassin Rogue plus 3 Gloomstalker Ranger also equals 5 martial prowess, unlocking extra attack and plus 1 AC by level 6. Basically, Assassin, Rogue plus Gloomstalker Ranger is even better than it was in vanilla. That might be a little too much, but whatever. You get your extra attack at level 6 now with this setup instead of level 8, which is a huge bonus. The system also means that half marshals and third marshals receive extra attack while monoclassed at levels 9 and 10 respectively. If the class already receives extra attack in their kit, something has been moved or made to replace it at their earlier level. We're going to talk about those with Swords Bard and College of Valor Bard later. Bladesinger we kind of already talked about, but we'll talk about that too. Okay, moving on from martial prowess, these are new classes that have been added specifically for the Origin companions. These are the 6 primary companions that you can choose to play as from the start of the game. The 4 minor companions and Dark Urge have also received minor classes, which are essentially extra features to help shape their playstyle, but they're not nearly as big as the ones for the original Origin companions. Tav is also completely alone because it's a completely custom character. You do what you want with that one. First up, we've got Shadowheart, God's favorite princess, the Daughter of Darkness. This is her class name. She starts out as a level 1 caster with a unique paladin/cleric limited spell list. She gets Sanctuary and Command, Divine Favor, Guiding Bolt, and she gets her own unique Wrathful Smite inspired by her background in Torture with the Sharans. She gets Healing Word, Disguise Self, and Shield of Faith. She also has a unique feature where she can bind a weapon to herself with the Shadows or with the Twilight, depending on your story decisions. She can bind a dagger, a spear, a scimitar, or a glaive. The scimitar is locked to shadow-bound weapons, and the glaive is locked to twilight-bound weapons. These bound weapons gain the returning feature, so she can throw them like the dagger, and they also roll attack rolls with her wisdom. You don't throw them with your wisdom, but you do roll weapon attack rolls with your wisdom. All of these weapons also gain additional features based on which one that you did. So daggers deal additional damage equal to your dexterity modifier. Spears give you a 50% chance to apply Blade Ward to yourself, so they make you tankier. Scimitars apply the Tortured condition, which causes enemies to receive disadvantage on con saves, which is really strong. And glaives don't actually do this anymore. Ignore that. This had some bugs with it that I could not fix, and so she's inexperienced with glaives, but she can still bind them with a Twilight-bound weapon. She also receives the ability to Shadow Step. If she's lightly or heavily obscured, she can teleport to another lightly or heavily obscured location. She can just move through the shadows. This is a Sharan ability. It's really cool, but she doesn't receive advantage on her attacks afterwards. That's still a monk feature. Finally, she is a third martial. So she gains 1 martial prowess at every even level, and this means she's going to get extra attack at level 10 if you stick around in her entire class. But if you only take 1 level of her class, you're not going to gain any martial prowess. Finally, if you keep leveling her past level 2, you're going to continue gaining spell slots. You'll gain all the cleric spell list, and you'll also gain trickery domain spells, as well as divine strike poison. You don't gain a channel divinity or any of that. You're not a full cleric when you do this. You're somewhere between a cleric and a paladin with full caster progression. Next up, we've got Gale and the Orb Bearer class. His abilities are all focused around his relationship to his orb and how it both drains him of power and gives him power. So he has a passive called Carsight Recovery, which makes arcane recovery charges regenerate on short rest instead of long rest, and he gains up to 3 arcane recovery charges based on his level. So he's going to gain 1 charge at level 1, 5, and 9. This happens even if you're only 1 level of Orb Bearer. To partner with Carsight Recovery, there's another passive called Carsight Magic, which gains you up to 2 additional spell slots that increase in power as Gale levels up to a maximum of 4th level and 5th level spell slots. These are guaranteed regardless of caster level and regardless of class. You take 1 level of Orb Bearer and you're going to get 2 spell slots that go up to 4th and 5th level. Also, to partner with that, we've got Channel the Orb. You can use your arcane recovery charges, which regenerate on short rest thanks to Carsight Recovery, to create new spell slots, kind of like a sorcerer does. And these spell slots last until long rest, similar to the elixirs. These unlock at normal spell slot progression breakpoints. So at level 1, you can create level 1 spell slots. At level 3, you can create level 2. At level 5, you can create level 3. Level 7, 4, 9, 5, and so on. You can also learn spells like a wizard, but this limits your learned spell preparation to 4 plus your intelligence modifier. I think that's actually wrong. I think it's 1 plus your intelligence modifier unless you level up Orb Bearer higher. If you keep the class past level 2, you're going to continue gaining spell slots. You're going to learn spells from the wizard spell list every level, and you'll gain arcane recovery charges at the normal rate that a wizard does. There was 2 other passives that I didn't read. Defender of the Orb. If Gale has 3 arcane recovery charges, he increases his armor class by 2. So if you take 1 level of Orb Bearer, you're going to gain 1 arcane recovery charge. 2 more levels of Wizard, you're going to have 3, and suddenly you're going to have plus 2 AC. Then Power of the Orb. When casting a damaging cantrip, you deal an additional 1d4 damage if you have at least 1 arcane recovery charge available. So the play pattern is something like you want to spend your arcane recovery charges down to 3 every short rest, and then before you short rest, spend the rest of those to generate a level 3 spell slot, a level 2 spell slot, level 1, whatever. And then you short rest and you're back to full, and you can spend down to 3 again to keep these 2 buffs. Or if you really need those spell slots, you can spend these 2 buffs and gain the extra spell slots. So basically, Gale just ends up with the most ridiculous amount of spellcasting ability, and he is an exceptionally powerful cantrip user with this 1d4 additional damage. Really strong class. Next, we've got Karlach and the Heart of Fire class. She gains a passive called Hellfire Rage, which causes her weapon and unarmed attacks to deal 1d4 additional Hellfire damage while raging instead of just the generic +2 to weapon damage. So raging also causes any additional fire damage that you deal to be Hellfire damage. If you don't know, Hellfire ignores resistance and immunity to fire damage. So while she's raging, she deals 1d4 additional Hellfire with her weapon attacks and unarmed attacks. It's really, really cool. She also gets the default rage ability with 2 rage charges. Some other passives she gets is she gets +2 to initiative, and she ignores difficult terrain. This is like a typical barbarian feature later, like level 7 it is, I think. But she escaped from the Hells and fought in the Blood War. She is this. She's also a full martial, so she gains 1 martial prowess at every level. So her first level counts as a full martial level, which is important because it means she will get extra attack at level 5 still if you take 4 other martial levels. But you won't get it if you don't take martial levels. This is an important change because in previous editions, she had a passive called Guaranteed Extra Attack, which meant at level 5, you were guaranteed extra attack, regardless of what other classes you chose. That meant it was really easy for people to be like, well, I want extra attack on my sorcerer, so I'm just going to snag a little Heart of Fire, or, as we'll see, Lae'zel's class, Astral Soldier, and now I have extra attack and a whole bunch of other features, plus 11 levels of a caster, and now I'm just a god tier character because I got extra attack from a single level of a martial class. That is no longer possible under this new system. And in the future, even if martial prowess doesn't work out and we end up taking it out for like a version 5 or version 6 or whatever, it is likely that a version of martial prowess will remain for Karlach and Lae'zel's classes, just to avoid that kind of problem. Karlach also gets another thing at level 10 called 10 Years of Fury, which is a unique rage that causes her weapon or unarmed attacks to explode in hellfire fireballs. But this rage is super powerful, and so it is only usable once per game, and it unlocks at level 10. I will let you guess what I think you should use that for. She also gets a really weird feature. She's a Constitution caster. If you were to stay in Karlach's class the entire time, you're going to get additional rage charges, Relentless Rage, and 3 modified fire damage spells that work while raging. These are spells that are castable while being a barbarian that are going to use her Constitution to choose their spell save DC. This also means her item usage will use her Constitution spell save DC unless you take another class that comes with a caster level. Very fun class. It is very fun to just do a bunch of fire damage. Next up, we have Will and the Blade of Frontiers class. His class is built all around managing your bonus actions and using Eldritch Blast effectively. So he has Blade's Flourish. This is an at-will flourish ability as a bonus action that deals weapon damage divided by 2 plus your weapon damage riders and possibly sets enemies off balance. This is usable every turn as a bonus action weapon attack. It is very fun, but it's a choice. You can use this or you can use something else. Like Blade Ward, he has a unique variant of this spell that's a bonus action and has no cooldown. So he can just spam Blade Ward every single turn. It only lasts 2 turns, so it only lasts till the end of the next turn, but it does make him quite tanky. He also has the Daredevil Gloves effect, which has been changed a little bit, but he can cast any spell in melee range without disadvantage. You just toggle the passive on. It doesn't toggle itself anymore because that was like very buggy. Very buggy. Doesn't do that anymore. Next up, he unlocks Eldritch Blast and the Agonizing Blast passive. So he can add his Charisma modifier to his Eldritch Blast regardless of taking any Warlock levels, which is nice. So you can choose to be like a Blade of Frontiers and a Ranger, and you can still use your Eldritch Blast in melee distance as a sort of extra attack. To help supplement that, the Blast of Frontiers is another passive that he gets, and this allows him to add +1 to attack and damage rolls with Eldritch Blast at level 4, and then at level 6+, he gets to add +2 to his attack and damage rolls with Eldritch Blast. This effectively makes Eldritch Blast into a +2 weapon, while he can still focus on becoming a martial character with his flourish abilities or whatever, right? He's also a charisma caster, a half martial, so he gains martial prowess at every odd level and will get extra attack at level 9, and he's a warlock class tags, of course. If you continue in his class past level 2, which I actually highly recommend doing on Will. The other ones, I don't really recommend that much, but Will, you should absolutely take him to level 6, okay? Take his class all the way to level 6. Then take whatever you want for the other 6 levels. If you do so, you're going to gain 2 Natural Explorer Ranger passives, Mage Breaker, and a unique Pact of the Chain familiar with its buffs from the Warlock changes that we're going to go over later. You want this familiar. You want it. Go to level 6, get his familiar. You're going to have a blast with him. He's great. Astarion. He gets the Night Stalker class, and his claim to fame is Vampiric Touch. This is a unique cantrip variant of Vampiric Touch, which deals 1d10 necrotic damage, scaling all the way up to 3d10, and it heals for some of the damage. However, this ability can also sneak attack if you have advantage and you don't have disadvantage. The sneak attack damage is 1d6 at base and gains an additional die every odd level up, all the way up to 5d6 at level 11, same as a rogue's sneak attack. This ability also counts as a sneak attack when it hits a target, consuming that sneak attack charge, and you can only have 1 sneak attack charge in Chocolate Edition. There's no way to get extra charges by like stacking rogue on top of this. It doesn't work. It's capped at 1. But this means you can sneak attack with necrotic damage, dealing 3d10 plus up to 5d6, so that's a lot because that's 30 and that's 30, so up to 60 damage every turn. If you have advantage, that's pretty good, and you get to heal for a bunch of the damage done. Kind of awesome. He also gets Cunning Action Hide, Vampiric Charm, which is Persuasion and Deception expertise, and he gets an extra 1.5 meters of movement speed to help maintain this ability to get into melee distance. He's also a Charisma caster, not an Intelligence caster. Sometimes that's controversial, but Astarion oozes Charisma, not really Intelligence. It fits his character better. I know it doesn't synergize with being an arcane trickster, but it fits his character better. Finally, if you continue past level 2, you're going to gain the other cunning actions. You'll also gain Dirty Trick, Vicious Mockery, because that's just hilarious. You gain the Evasion ability, which will make you tankier, and you will get an additional feat as well as Reliable Talent. Finally, of the origin classes, we have Astral Soldier for Lae'zel. She gets some Githyanki themed abilities like Lesser Githyanki Parry. This is a feature that allows Lae'zel to reduce the damage of any physical damage taken by 1d4 as long as she has a reaction point available to spend. So it doesn't consume the reaction point, but if you use your reaction on something else, she loses the damage reduction. So she reduces any physical damage taken by 1d4 as long as her reaction point is available. Well, can she spend a reaction that easily? She can, via Riposte. Lae'zel can make a normal weapon attack against an enemy that attacks her and misses for the cost of a reaction point. This is extremely powerful, maybe a little too powerful, but it's very fun. It's just very fun to leave this on and someone misses and you just return and just big bonk. This doesn't deal additional damage like the Battlemaster version, so the Battlemaster version is still worth obtaining as Lae'zel if you would like, but you don't have to because you can already do this. As a pseudo fighter class, she's also going to gain a choice of fighting style. There are two options. The first is called Githyanki Power. When you attack with a greatsword or a longsword, I need to edit this, or a crossbow, you deal additional damage equal to your intelligence modifier. So she's rewarded for building intelligence as well as using greatswords, longswords, and crossbows specifically. This is very, very powerful. However, I've heard from a lot of people they think the other option is even more powerful, and it is called Githyanki Acrobatics. This is inspired by her leap into combat that first time that you meet her. Once per battle, you can leap a great distance at the cost of 4.5 meters of movement speed and a bonus action. When you land, you get a free action main hand attack with one of your equipped weapons, either melee or ranged. So when you jump, you can attack with your weapon, with your melee weapon, or your ranged weapon. So you spend one bonus action and you get an attack. And you get a ton of movement speed from it. I don't know why everyone says this one's more powerful, because like with this one, you can build strength and intelligence and you get your damage, your initiative, and then just wear heavy armor to be tanky, and you're golden. This is like really strong for greatswords and longswords especially. I don't know. You're also a full martial. Think about what I said about Karlach. You are going to get extra attack at level 5 if you take 5 more martial class levels. Finally, if you continue past level 2 in the class, you're going to gain the champion fighter class features, which we're going to have to talk about in a little bit, and an additional feat, just like you would as a fighter. Notably, you will not get action surge. You are astral soldier, you're not a fighter. If you want action surge, you gotta be a fighter. Okay, let's move on to the new minor classes. These are for Dark Urge, Halsin, Minthara, Jaheira, and Minsk. The Dark Urge gets a passive called Storm Cursed Memories, which unlocks Booming Blade and Shocking Grasp by default, and once per turn, when you damage an enemy with either of those cantrips, you trigger a DC 19 history check to check your memory. If you pass the check, you can use either of those cantrips a second time as a free action on the same turn. This is ridiculously strong. But you're the Dark Urge, you're the son of Baal, right? Murder with storms and lightning and stuff. That's what you do. At least what you did before you lost your memory. So if you pass the check, you basically get extra attack. Now you have to pass a DC 19 history check, which makes gnomes, I think, like the best Dark Urges in the game. But, you know, Booming Blade twice, Shocking Grasp twice. Go for it. Halsin. Halsin gets a passive called Natural Healer. This is a new passive that unlocks a version of the Preserve Life channel divinity called Preserve Nature, which will heal all non-undead or construct allies in the area around Halsin at the cost of a natural recovery charge, which he gets 2 of. Minthara, she gets the Drow Commander passive. Up to every other turn, so every 2 turns, Minthara can use her own version of Command Approach as an action. When she does this, she can follow it up with a variant of Commander's Strike as a free action. So you can command an enemy to approach you, and you can command an ally to attack at the cost of a reaction point. I've not actually played with this. I don't play with Minthara, but I've heard this is a lot of fun and fits her quite well. It does give her an insane amount of crowd control because she gets to use command approach like all the time. That seems fitting. Notably, Halsin and Minthara don't inherit these before they are your companions, so she's not going to use this on you all the time. That would be really funny if she did, though. Jaheira, the High Harper. This is a new passive that unlocks the ability Practiced Strike, which is right here. Jaheira can attack with both her main and offhand for just the cost of a bonus action once per turn. She also gains the 2-weapon fighting style. I need to actually look into this to make sure this is correct. The 2-weapon fighting style has received pretty big changes from version 3 that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So I'm going to have to look into that. But I think this is accurate. At the very least, I know she gets Practice Strike, which lets her use both her main and offhand attack for just a bonus action once per turn. It's very cool, very strong. If she does get 2-weapon fighting style, then this means she can actually attack with both weapons with her action, and then she can attack with both weapons for her bonus action without requiring extra attack, which is pretty cool. That would be pretty neat. Anyway, Minsk. He gets Reckless Attack. It's just Reckless Attack. It's Minsk. Of course he needs that. And he gets the passive, Minsk is Tough, which is a new passive that reduces all damage taken by the duration of the Minsk is Tough status. It stacks up to 5, and he gains 2 stacks every time he takes damage. So when he takes damage, he gets tougher. Minsk. There we go. Okay, let's move on to general changes for the vanilla classes. Biggest thing, all the vanilla classes now get an additional feat at level 2. This adds a ton of power, but it also allows you to pick a ton of flavor if you want. So I would recommend choosing flavor and not just power gaming all the time. You can also gain a ton of feats. You can get up to 6 feats. There is a chance that in a future edition I change this. I have learned that I can give you a feat on your primary class at level 2, but then when you multi-class, I don't have to give you that feat. I've learned I can do that. I have not done it yet, but I am thinking about it. So in the future, this may just be, if you stick with one class, you get 4 feats. If you start multi-classing, you'll get your feats at levels 4, 8, and 12 like normal. Haven't done it yet. We'll see. At the moment, though, you can max out at 6 feats with 8 levels of fighter and 4 levels of anything, which is crazy. It's crazy. All right, let's look at the big classes. I've actually made a whole video on the Paladin class changes. You can check that out on my channel page somewhere. The biggest change is that Channel Oath recharges on long rest up from a short rest. You're granted 2 charges at level 1 and then 1 additional charge every Paladin level up to level 12, with a maximum of 8 charges barring items. The reason I did this is because Divine Smite has been completely reworked for the player into a toggled passive called Channel Oath Smite. When the passive is toggled on, you smite. When the passive is toggled off, you don't smite. The smites increase in level. They start out at 2d8 radiant damage, and then from level 7 plus, it's 3d8 radiant damage. And this has a really funny consequence. If you break your oath and you have not talked with the Oathbreaker yet, as I did in a run where I had to kill the Oathbreaker before I could become an Oathbreaker, you lose access to smites. That's a fun role-playing consequence. It's kind of cool. Or if you break your oath mid-combat, you can no longer smite, which I think is really funny. Some of the spell smites have also received damage buffs, concentration removal, or other effects. You can see the spell changes for more information. We will see those changes in the spell changes later on. And because Divine Smite has been reworked from a spell that you use to a passive that you turn on, and the reaction smiting has also been removed, Channel Oath abilities have been buffed or adjusted where necessary to make them more competitive with smiting, because now Channel Oath Smite costs a Channel Oath charge. So Smite competes with Channel Oath abilities instead of Smite competing with spell slots. It's a big, big flavor change. Finally, improved Divine Smite. This has been made a toggleable passive so that you can avoid Radiant Retort when you need to. For the actual subclass changes, Healing Radiance and Nature's Wrath are unchanged for the Oath of the Ancients, but Turn the Faithless has received a +2 bonus to its spell save DC so that it is harder to resist. Holy Rebuke from Oath of Devotion now lasts 10 turns and scales up all the way to 1d10 at cantrip level. So at level 10, you're going to deal 1d10 radiant damage when people hit you with Holy Rebuke. And Sacred Weapon, this is the ability that lets you spend a Channel Oath charge to add your Charisma modifier to your attack rolls. This now costs 2 Channel Oath charges, but it lasts until Long Rest. So you no longer have to give up an action during combat just to gain like a +3 bonus to your attack rolls. You can just do it all day, but you give up 2 smites to do so. Finally, Turn the Unholy for Oath of Devotion also receives a +2 bonus to its spell save DC. Oath of Vengeance, this gets Inquisitor's Might, which is like add your Charisma modifier to damage. It now lasts 5 turns, so in more extended fights, this can be a lot more damage than smiting, which is pretty good. Abjure Enemy now costs a bonus action down from an action, so you can frighten an individual enemy for just a bonus action, which is pretty neat. And Vow of Enmity is now a free action, so it doesn't cost a bonus action, but it cannot be used on yourself, so you can't give yourself advantage on everyone. You can't make yourself your own worst enemy. Oath of the Crown receives Righteous Clarity, which is unchanged because it's really strong. Champion's Challenge gains a bonus to its DC, and Turn the Tide lets you grant +1 AC to anyone that you heal with it. Finally, there is Oathbreaker, where Spiteful Suffering gains +2 bonus to its DC and costs a bonus action down from an action. Control Undead also gains the +2 bonus to its DC, and Dreadful Aspect also gains a +2 bonus to its DC and lasts for 1 more turn. So Oathbreaker ends up being a very powerful control-oriented paladin, or you can, of course, just smite. So there's a lot of changes packed into what really doesn't look like a lot, but removing the ability to smite on reaction takes away both some of the incredible burst damage that the paladin has and some of the UI clunk that comes with clicking no to the reaction every time that it isn't a critical hit. I think this is a super positive change, which is a lot of fun. The changes of smites to a Channel Oath cost from a spell slot also opens up many more super smites per day without exploits, which can be very fun and rewarding. So you're going to end up with, I think it's 8 charges, right? Plus 7 spell slots or something like that. So you can super smite up to 7 times per day. It's really cool now that Shield of Faith also isn't competing with Divine Smite for spell slots, and neither are the spell smites themselves. That means you get to do more paladin things as a higher level paladin. No longer is the best way to be a paladin to be a bard, sorcerer, or blade singer. If you want to smite a lot, barring spell smites, of course, you're going to take paladin as high as you can. Importantly, NPC paladins are unchanged. They're still going to dump high level smites into your skull every time they get a chance. So that's paladins. The big thing is Divine Smite has been reworked. You really got to get into the game and try it out. It's a lot of fun to play this kind of paladin, I think. I think this is the definitive way to play paladin. All right, next up, we have the rogue changes, starting with the thief subclass. The big thing here is we've moved the fast hands passive from level 3 all the way to level 9. This is the extra bonus action passive, and it's been moved to level 9. That feels really late, and it is, and I'm not super happy with that change, but I haven't figured out how to solve this problem yet, so we're going to get there. We'll get there in the future. This is probably not done yet. For version 4, it's done. For version 5, we'll see. You also gain a new passive called Fleet Feet. You can sneak as a free action once per turn, so you don't get this extra bonus action yet, but you do get to sneak as a free action once per turn, which is a sort of a bonus action. You can use your bonus action for something else, and then you can sneak. So you can dash, run around the corner, sneak. Or sneak, dash, run around the corner. That's usually better to do. Anyway, you also gain a passive called Practice Made Pretty Good. When you make sleight of hand checks, you're going to roll with advantage. Thieves are actually going to have something pretty interesting to do with their sleight of hand checks later on. When you make a sleight of hand check, you're going to roll with advantage. So you can pick pockets, you can pick locks, you can do thief things really, really, really well at level 3. At level 4, notice this is level 4. This used to be a feature at level 3. At level 4, you're going to gain the ability called Trick Knife, which is the ability to throw up to 2 knives as an action that deals your sneak attack dice to each target. The throw is affected by Tavern Brawler, but it uses its own ability icon separate from the normal throw, and it's not technically a throw, it is a melee weapon attack, so it gains melee weapon attack roll bonuses, but it doesn't inherit damage riders. It's a quirky, weird thing. I don't remember exactly why I did all of that, but I did it for a reason. It does not require advantage to target enemies, and you cannot use this in a sneak attack on the same turn. So you basically lose the weapon damage portion, but you deal your sneak attack damage twice. So if your sneak attack damage is 66, right? If you're level 11 or 5d6, this ends up being 10d6 damage every single turn. You can't throw it at the same enemy, but you can throw it at 2 different enemies. So it makes Thief kind of an area of effect damage rogue, which is kind of a neat thing to be. Next up, at level 9, you gain Cunning Action Leap. This is a new passive that allows thieves to jump once per turn as a free action. So you can sneak as a free action, you can jump as a free action, and you get Fast Hands, which gives you a second bonus action. So you conceivably can run, jump, dash, and sneak. Right? Yeah, you get access to like 4 bonus actions. So you can dash, jump, sneak. You can dash, disengage, sneak, jump. All on the same turn. 4 bonus actions, effectively. The Thief ends up with a ton of action economy. It's just not damage-oriented action economy. It's like mobility and utility and just doing Thief things, okay? It's cool. I think it's going to play really well, even though Fast Hands is now like a big level 9 feature instead of a level 3 feature. But if you want that bonus action earlier, you still have another option. You can take a feat that we'll see later called the Reckless Feat, which lets you gain a bonus action from a feat. You just take a -3 penalty to your saving throws, but if you're sneaking every turn and enemies can't find you, that doesn't matter. So you can end up with a 3rd bonus action if you want. It's kind of crazy. Next up, we have the Assassin. As I said earlier, they get to be a half martial, so they gain +1 martial prowess for every even level of the class. So that's extra attack at level 9, which isn't mentioned here, but that is what that means. And at level 4, they are also going to gain Infiltration Expertise, which used to be a level 9 feature. Infiltration Expertise is just Disguise Self, and it was a level 9 feature? Heck no. No. That's been moved. Infiltration Expertise is now level 4, so you can disguise yourself at level 4. Is that super useful? Not really. So I gave them something else as well, which is Tools of the Trade. This passive grants access to poison and acid versions of sneak attack. So now they can be a little bit poison themed, they can be a little bit acid themed. It's the same exact damage as regular sneak attack, but you can now use this to try and bypass like piercing resistance or slashing resistance or whatever, right? Otherwise, it's exactly the same as sneak attack, but you can use, of course, poison riders and acid riders and whatever. Finally, for the rogue subclasses, we've got Arcane Trickster. I've moved some stuff around and added some new options here. Do we have extra on the next page? Nope. Next is Monk. So yeah, Arcane Trickster. At level 4, you gain a new passive option to choose your flavor of Arcane Sneak Attack. So the passive options for you are Trickster's Flick. This used to be a level 6 feature in previous versions of Chocolate Edition. And this is when casting a cantrip, Arcane Tricksters roll a DC 21 or a DC 17 Arcana check. It's 21 if you are neither sneaking nor invisible, and it's 17 if you are sneaking or invisible. If they pass the check and they have a sneak attack charge available, they can quickly cast a second cantrip as a free action, like extra attack but for cantrips, at the cost of their sneak attack charge. So at level 4, when you get this, if you pass the check and you threw out a firebolt, you can cast another firebolt, right? Or you can cast a free action Shocking Grasp or a free action Bone Chill or whatever, right? So it's an extra 1d10 damage. Or you could use your bonus action to try and get an actual sneak attack, which at this level would be a weapon attack plus 2d6. Whatever, right? This passive also increases the damage with non-weapon cantrips by your dexterity modifier, which is pretty good. So you can build intelligence and dexterity and get an absolute ton of cantrip damage at just level 4 Arcane Trickster. However, there's also something else. You can choose Trickster's Flick, or you can choose Arcane Blast. This unlocks Chromatic Orb for you, and when you deal damage with Chromatic Orb while fulfilling the conditions for a sneak attack, so if you have advantage and don't have disadvantage, or you have an ally nearby your target and you don't have disadvantage, you can add your sneak attack dice to the damage. So now you can choose between double cantrip casting, which is a lot of fun, or you can lean into a true arcane sneak attack with different elemental variants. Arcane Blast turns a level 1 chromatic orb into a maximum of 3d8 plus, it might be 5d6 or 6d6 spell damage, which is awesome. You can actually turn your level 1 into spell slots that arcane tricksters get quite a few of. I think they end up with like 8 total spell slots into quite a lot of damage. And as we're going to see, there's a really cool way to restore all of those spell slots later on, so you can get a lot of these per day. It's pretty neat. One thing you may have noticed is there's no longer any level 6 features for these classes. It is level 3, 4, and 9. This is to give the entire rogue class and subclass structure parity with Swashbuckling Rogue, which has level 3, level 4, and level 9 features. So this is how all of the rogue subclasses work now. They've been simplified down to 3, 4, and 9. So that's why I made these changes. This used to be level 6, and assassins used to get their extra attack at level 6, but now they get it at level 9. I also didn't say this, but because of martial prowess, they gain +1 AC at level 4 as well, which is pretty neat. I lied. They gain +1 AC at level 3, which is pretty neat. Along with all of their other features, by the way. I didn't replace any of their level 3 features. Okay, let's move on to Monk. This is one of the major reworks I did. I made a whole video about this a while ago, but this is a better version of that now. It got an update in this patch. For the 4 elements Monk specifically, we get the unique key weapon feature. So it's a reflavored packed weapon that lets you use a melee or ranged weapon with your wisdom instead of your dexterity or strength or whatever. It works with any weapon. It does not have to be a monk weapon, but of course you still want proficiency, but it doesn't have to be any of those. It can be any weapon. You also gain this ability, Martial Arts Wise Attacks. It's a toggled passive that lets you turn your unarmed attacks into wisdom-based unarmed attacks. So you can really dump all of your points into wisdom as a 4 elements monk, get your spell save DC really high, and you can still make punches, which is pretty cool. This is new, I think, in version 3. Version 2 did not have this. It is a little clunky, and that's just because of the nature of this system. To make your attacks wisdom, you have to like polymorph yourself, so you're technically shape shifting, so it behaves a little weird, but it works and it's fun. One of the major features of 4 elements monk is nature's plenty. 4 elements monks can regenerate key points with melee weapon attacks. This is not true. It's melee weapon or unarmed attacks. It just has to be a melee martial attack. I'm going to change that. Via this new class, feature, and passive, all you need to do is pass a DC 17 nature skill check. You also gain nature proficiency at level 5 and expertise at level 7 to make this a little easier. This is an intelligence check, which is, kind of challenging for a wisdom-based monk, but if you pass it, you gain key points back that you can keep spending on whatever you want. You also get bonus action cantrip-like spells. These are Chill of the Mountain, Fangs of the Fire Snake, and Touch of the Storm. These all cost 1 key point to use, and they replace, I don't think I actually say it here, they replace your Flurry of Blows. So 4 elements monk cannot use Flurry of Blows. Instead, they get Chill of the Mountain, Fangs of the Fire Snake, and Touch of the Storm. These all roll as melee spell attacks, and they all have the same damage now. In particular, I think they deal unarmed damage plus like 1d6, and that 1d6 scales to 2d6 and eventually to 3d6 damage, I believe. So you're really choosing which one you want based on the bonus effect. So if you want to slow enemies, you go with Chill of the Mountain. If you want if you want extra fire damage, you go with Fangs of the Fire Snake. And if you want to stop reactions, you go with Touch of the Storm. But they all deal the same amount of damage. Fangs just gets an extra damage rider for your other stuff. So yeah, that's how that works. Chill of the Mountain, Fangs of the Fire Snake, Touch of the Storm. They are all actually worth taking now. In previous versions of this monk rework, it was still just Fangs of the Fire Snake every single time. It's worth noting, I said they all roll as melee spell attacks, and that includes Chill of the Mountain. This is a melee spell attack, so you won't have disadvantage if you use this in melee range. Later on in the class, Ride the Wind. This is the ability to fly. It no longer requires concentration. So if you take this, it also costs only 3 key points, down from 4. So you can just fly if you take this and sacrifice it as a spell known slot, which is pretty cool. There's also Flames of the Phoenix got a massive buff. Instead of unlocking Flames of the Phoenix at level 11 and it costing like 4 key points for a level 3 fireball or something, screw that. We're going to make it cost an action, a bonus action, and 6 key points, but it is a level 6 fireball. It is 12d6 fire damage. Flames of the Phoenix is so much fun. Yes, you have to take all the way to level 11, and yes, you're dumping half of your key points for an entire short rest into one ability, but oh my gosh, is it so cool to launch a level 6 fireball twice in one combat and then go in and start smacking stuff with your fists or your staff or whatever and build your key points back up and then throw another one. It's so much fun. New to version 4, elemental abilities have consistent and predictable scaling this time. It was very unpredictable and varied before. But it's still improved from vanilla. So all spells scale whenever you get to learn a new spell, not replace one. So at levels 3, 6, 9, and 11, your spells all scale in damage. They either scale in 1 damage dice or 1 target. There's also some new spells that have been added that are unlocked at the same time as Flames of the Phoenix, and these have similar use costs and power, but different themes. For example, there's like a Chain Lightning variant and Destructive Wave. There is a Chain Lightning and a Destructive Wave variant unlocked at the same time as Flames of the Phoenix, if you choose to do that. Some removed features: you don't have dexterous attacks, so you can't turn anything into dexterity attacks. You have to do wisdom with them, or you have to do strength. You also don't have Flurry of Blows because you're going to sling those spells instead. Next up for monks, Way of the Shadow's gotten a buff. Their dark vision can now see through magical darkness, so they make a really good addition to a darkness party. They can be the darkness caster instead of your warlock, so the warlock spell slots can do more work, really good addition. They also gain the ability Shadow Blade, which is the equivalent to a level 2 cast of Shadow Blade. So it's a 2d8 weapon, I believe. And it lasts until long rest, and it costs 2 key points for them to cast. Finally, the base class for Monk, which that's not finally, because Drunken Master is next. But anyway, finally, Stunning Strike has been increased in key cost up to 2. The cost is split. It costs 1 point no matter what, and it costs 1 point if you hit. Normally, it's 1 point if your attack lands and forces the saving throw. The reason for this is Stunning Strike is one of the most powerful abilities in the game. It just is. You can stun almost every enemy in the game with this, and you can just lock down bosses just by having high dexterity and punching them. Like, it's just too strong. It needs to be more costly to use. But if you miss, you only spend 1 key point instead of 2. Next up is the Way of the Drunken Master. This has gotten another big rework. Its ability Cheeky Tipple is now a DC 16 performance check whenever you deal damage with a melee weapon or an unarmed attack, and if you pass the check, you regenerate key points, just like Nature's Plenty for the 4 Elements Monk. While drunk, your charisma is also set to a minimum of 13 to make that performance check a little bit easier to make. Some of their signature abilities, like Intoxicating Strike, it deals extra damage equal to your Wisdom modifier, and it has a +2 bonus to the save DC to inflict drunk, which is really good. Life of the Party, this is a passive that's been reworked. Damaging a drunk target grants you temporary HP for 2 turns equal to your character level +5, so up to 17 temp HP. That makes you very, very tanky as a Drunken Master. The Way of the Drunken Master Monk unique variant of Flurry of Blows called Drunken Technique has also had its key point cost increased to 2 points. The reason for this is to make the Intoxicating Strike and a Sobering Realization play pattern more appealing, as well as if you pass this DC performance check, Drunken Technique can end up costing 0 key points anyway, so it needs that higher cost to be balanced. Sobering Realization, this goes along with Intoxicating Strike. So Intoxicating Strike deals additional damage, and you can turn targets drunk, right? Sobering Realization, you roll an attack roll and an independent performance skill check against the enemy's insight skill. If you hit the attack, you deal unarmed damage plus 2d8 plus your wisdom modifier and psychic damage. So you deal unarmed damage and bludgeoning and 2d8 plus wisdom and psychic. If you pass the performance check, you also deal an additional 2d8 psychic damage. So this brings the total damage up to your unarmed damage, which can be up to 1d8, plus your strength modifier or dexterity modifier, plus 4d8 plus wisdom modifier psychic. It is insane, and it no longer removes life of the party. So you get to deal a bunch of extra damage, and you're really rewarded for getting targets drunk and then sobering them up, and then getting targets drunk and then sobering them up, instead of just drunken techniquing and just flurry of blows your way through all the combats. All right, that's the monks. Let's move on to fighter. At fighter level 5, this is to replace their extra attack passive because they gain it from martial prowess now. Instead, they gain a passive called Improved Second Wind. This new passive makes Second Wind into a free action that heals for more. It's not quite double, but it's close. This just makes up for losing extra attack. That's the whole purpose. As far as subclasses go, champion fighters have a complete rework. Champion's Power is a new passive that you can activate that grants your melee weapon attacks increased damage equal to your proficiency bonus. At level 7, this gets upgraded to Improved Champion's Power, which reduces the number needed to roll a critical hit by 2. So this is the I want to hit really hard button. You get to add up to +4, and you can even increase your chance to roll critical hits by a substantial amount. Hit hard, Champion's Power. Hit accurately is Champion's Precision. This passive can be activated that lets you add half of your proficiency bonus rounded up to your attack rolls. So that's at most +2 when you hit level 5. The reason for that is +4 to attack rolls is actually like really, really high. And there's already other ways to do that in the mod. So this was it was too strong. So it's half of your proficiency bonus. Anyway, at level 7, this gets upgraded to Improved Champion's Precision, which causes all weapon attacks to ignore resistances, including ranged weapons. So normally, these other things are for melee weapons only, but the level 7 features are for anything. Any critical hit, you get a -2 to the threshold, and any weapon damage ignores resistances as long as it's bludgeoning, slashing, or piercing. Now, normally, you can only have Champion's Power or Champion's Precision active, but later on, you can get both through Champion's Surge. This is a new passive feature, formerly called Champion's Might, and it activates when you action surge. It's a passive. Unlocked at level 10, when you action surge, you apply the effects of both Champion's Power and Champion's Precision at the same time for the rest of your turn. So if you action surge and then take 6 attacks, you get +2 bonus to your accuracy, plus proficiency to your damage, so +4 damage. You roll critical hits on an 18 or lower if you have additional critical hit modifiers, and you ignore resistances. It is very, very strong. So Champion is very simple. You just pick which passive you want at any given moment, and that's the whole play pattern. Other than that, you just hit stuff and you hit it hard. Later on, you use Champion's Surge to get both effects at the same time, and then you just reactivate these after that's up. Very, very strong. All right, Rangers have also been reworked. This was for version 3. I made a video about it, but it's also in version 4. Rangers' favored enemy set of passives have been replaced with Rangers training. Your journeys and studies have taught you many things, but mostly how to survive and thrive on any adventure. So Magebreaker gives you Concentrated True Strike, which is a bonus action version of True Strike that requires concentration but has no cooldown. Normal True Strike is now a bonus action, but it has a cooldown. This one does not. Keeper of the Veil gives you Protection from Evil and Good as a bonus action at will, which grants it for 5 turns. This also has to do with the changes that the spell received. There's also 4 new ones. Protector lets you cast Sanctuary without a spell slot once per short rest, or you can cast Warding Bond also without a spell slot once per short rest. Sage of the Wild lets you cast Ranger's Guidance at will. This is a cantrip that provides the benefits of Guidance and Bless at the same time, but doesn't stack with Guidance and Bless. It just applies the same effects. Sage of the Wild, very good. It is an action, I believe, but it's very strong. Pilgrim, this lets you cast Divine Favor with a spell slot, so you can basically use this instead of Hunter's Mark. You get 1d4 additional radiant damage on all of your attacks, and it lasts until long rest, which we'll see later in the spell changes. And finally, Wandering Monk. This just lets you use Dexterity as your attacking stat with monk weapons. So you're like a ranger monk at the same time. Next up, there are some more options for Natural Explorer. Wasteland Forager lets you find 8 good berries every long rest, which is really good. That's a lot of free healing and potions. Wild Endurance, this just gives you 1 additional hit point per ranger level. Wasteland Athlete gives you proficiency and expertise in athletics, so you can start shoving people off cliffs, even if your strength is low. Waste Not, you never waste a resource. You preserve 4 bottles of grease and 4 bottles of water per long rest. So you can start spreading grease all over the battlefield. You can throw water all over the battlefield. This is very strong as like a support ranger option. Tavern Crawler, this is a really funny one. Accustomed to bar crawls and bar brawls, when you are drunk, you receive +2 to your armor class. Additionally, rangers also now receive cantrips. You can learn exactly 1 of these as a ranger. You can choose from Shillelagh, Ray of Frost, Produce Flame, Thorn Whip, Shocking Grasp, Poison Spray, Lightning Strike, which is a lightning damage cantrip as we'll see, Sunfletch Strike, which is a radiant damage bow cantrip as we'll see, and Thundering String, which is new to version 4 and is a thunder bow cantrip. It's very cool. We'll see it in a bit. Finally, rangers also get a new kind of casting ability called instinctual casting. They have Ranger's Instinct, which function kind of like spell slots, but it's adjacent to them. And you can cast certain spells like Hail of Thorns, Ensnaring Strike, a unique Ice Knife variant, Cloud of Daggers as a ranger-only variant, Lightning Arrow, and Conjure Barrage. You get to choose one of these at level 2, 5, 7, 9, and 11. So you're going to unlock all but one of these. And many of them also work with extra attack. I think the exceptions to that are like Ice Knife, Cloud of Daggers. I think that's it. I think the rest of them all work with extra attack. Hail of Thorns, Conjure Barrage, and Lightning Arrow are all fully weapon attack rolls, meaning they can critically hit with all of their damage, and on a miss, they still deal half of their explosion damage while still triggering extra attack. Ensnaring Strike has a weapon attack roll portion and its saving throw portion like normal, and it will trigger extra attack. Ice Knife does not, it's just a spell. And only, this is important, only 1 instinct spell can be cast per turn, no matter how many actions you have available. This is to keep them balanced, since you're also going to get your extra attack, and many of these behave a bit like area of effect smites, which would just be ludicrously powerful. Hail of Thorns is a 1d10 per level, and you get 3 levels of these that you can cast that cost increasing amounts of instinct. So you can do like a ranged Hail of Thorns area of effect smite build, right? Like it's really, really strong. So you can only use 1 per turn. At level 2, you're going to gain 3 instinct to cast these spells with, and at levels 3 through 12, you also gain 1 additional instinct per level up to a maximum of 13 at level 12. Here are the spell details. Next up, we've got the spell list additions and changes to the Ranger class. The level 1 spell additions are Entangle, Healing Word, Create Water, Expeditious Retreat, Enhanced Sleep, and Featherfall. Many of these spells have received changes, like Expeditious Retreat is now one of the best spells in the game. It just gives you a ton of mobility because it is a free action dash that costs you a long rest resource, i.e. a spell slot. So ridiculously good. The level 2 spell additions are Enhance Ability, Heat Metal, Moonbeam, and Blur, and at level 3 you get some really good spells like Sleet Storm, Call Lightning, Stinking Cloud, and Glyph of Warding. These additions should all add some utility options to Rangers as well as some offensive options and even some control options, which are fantastic. This should make Rangers much better suited to be half casters or to even play like a spellcaster focused Ranger if you wanted to do that with, say, a Swarmkeeper Ranger. Speaking of Swarmkeeper Rangers, they have a massive overhaul, and that is they no longer use the reaction menu, and they don't spam you with it, which is great. So the big thing here is that each of the effects now triggers off of a specific kind of action, mostly attacks. So Jellyfish, for instance, if you use a non-spell weapon attack, at level 3, you can shock an enemy for 2 turns, and at level 11, they roll a strength save or they're disarmed. If you use any spell or cantrip attack, so like Booming Blade would count here, Lightning Strike would count here, which we'll talk about later. Zephyr Shot is a bow cantrip. Those all count as a spell or cantrip attack. And with those, you get 1d6 lightning damage and you get 2 lightning charges. So if you use a non-spell weapon attack, so if you just shoot with your bow or you hit them with a sword or whatever, shocked for 2 turns, strength save to disarm later on. Spell or cantrip attack, 1d6 lightning damage, and I think at level 11 you get 2 lightning charges. Moths, similarly, any weapon attack, so this can be a weapon attack, like a regular weapon attack, or it could be a cantrip weapon attack. You get 1d6 psychic damage, and at level 11, they get mental fatigue if they fail a saving throw. If you use a non-weapon spell attack, so think like Ray of Frost or Scorching Ray or, I don't know, any spell attack roll, and it's only a spell, you get blind for 2 turns, and at level 11, they roll a wisdom save to slow for 2 turns. Bees, non-spell weapon attack, they get level 3. At level 3, they get a knockback for 3.5 meters, and at level 11, they get a movement speed cost doubled for 2 turns. Any spell or cantrip attack, so again, this can be weapon cantrips, they get gaping wounds for 2 turns and then ruptured for 2 turns. So each of these does something a little bit different, and they've got their own unique combination of things that will trigger this. Is this a little convoluted? Yes. Sorry about it. Read your passives and figure it out. It's kind of cool. So you use specific kinds of actions to get specific kinds of effects instead of clicking on a reaction menu. There is also a toggled passive in the temporary section of the gameplay UI. This can be toggled off at will to choose which attack you want to use your effect on. So it's going to automatically toggle itself back off after expending your effect, and it will turn itself back on each turn. So if on the first attack of a turn you don't want to use it, and your second attack you do want to use it, you can choose that by turning it on and off. But where's the teleport? Swarm Keepers can do their whole teleport thing, right? Well, that is now triggered by applying Hunter's Mark or Fairy Fire. When you apply Hunter's Mark, you get a free action teleport. When you apply Fairy Fire, you get a free action teleport. And it doesn't use up your other swarm effects. So you can always use your swarm effect, and when you do one of these things, Hunter's Mark or Fairy Fire, you get your teleport. Now there are some more new features, like Fairy Fire is the GOAT. It's so good. When you apply Fairy Fire to something, your swarm will attack it, dealing 1d6 of your swarm's damage to it each turn after application. The first turn does not deal damage. I don't know if that's true. The first turn might deal damage. At level 11, it gains a new effect. Enemies you apply Fairy Fire to will also have their movement speed cost doubled. So Fairy Fire becomes an amazing spell. It just applies chip damage. It gives everybody advantage to hit them, and it's later on going to double their movement speed. Later on, it's going to double their movement speed cost. So they're going to move half as far, which is so strong. It is a ridiculously good spell. It's really fun to apply it to an entire group of enemies and then watch your swarm effects just like go and blast it. So much fun. You also get some new spells as a Swarm Keeper specifically. At level 5, you unlock Ensnaring Strands, which is a weapon attack cantrip, I believe, that can enweb your target for 5 turns if they fail a save. This is like Ensnaring Strike, but it enwebs instead of ensnares. So they don't take damage, but they also still can't move. They also get Pulling Web, which is a bonus action pull spell that can enweb your target for 5 turns. This is kind of like Thorn Whip, but instead of pulling them and dealing damage, you pull them and enweb them, which is really cool. And finally, at level 9, they get Stinking Cloud, which can rob enemies of actions if they fail a save. Pretty neat. Swarm Keepers are really cool. Next up, we have the Warlock base class, which has received a bunch of changes as well. This is all V3 stuff that I think I made an individual video about, but it's got the juice. It's super cool. But it also might piss you off. We'll see. So the first major change is that Eldritch Blast has been locked behind Pact of the Tome. Now here's my dev comment. Before you riot, hear me out. Eldritch Blast is so absurdly powerful that it runs the entire class and really limits the power that the pacts can bring. By shifting Eldritch Blast into Pact of the Tome, there is significant power budget available to buff the pacts. Pact of the Tome has also received some buffs alongside this Eldritch Blast change as well, because it was kind of crappy beforehand. Now, for real, Eldritch Blast being locked behind Pact of the Tome is not a big deal. You can still get it from Spell Sniper, the feat, which is a really good feat anyway, so you kind of would take it. You can also get Agonizing Blast from the Warlock Initiate feat, so you don't even have to be a Warlock in order to abuse Eldritch Blast in Chocolate Edition. Okay, so it's not a total loss. You just have to build for it. You have to choose it from Pact, or you have to choose it from Spell Sniper, or you have to get it from an item from some other mod. Okay, there's also some invocation changes. Book of Ancient Secrets. This, I believe, is a vanilla. This is a vanilla invocation, and you can now cast these spells using a Warlock spell slot. There's a new invocation called Eldritch Training. This is a level 5 option, and it gives you just +1 to attack and damage rolls with weapons. This is really strong. It allows you to be a weapon-wielding Warlock, even if you're not Pact of the Blade. There's also a change to Life Drinker. It's been moved to level 9 from level 11. And it also works like Agonizing Blast, but for any weapon attack. So it works on melee weapons, it works like works on bows, and it also only adds the damage one time, not multiple times. I think that was a bug. Not sure. It's been a while since I've written these notes. The big thing is that it's moved to level 9, so you don't have to go all the way to level 11 Warlock to get it. You get to play with it a lot earlier and have more fun with it. Agonizing Blast, this works on any cantrip that isn't a weapon attack. This is the big deal. Agonizing Blast works on any cantrip that isn't a weapon attack. So even if you don't have Eldritch Blast, you can still add your Charisma modifier as force damage to, say, a Bone Chill or a Vicious Mockery or whatever other cantrips you have access to. Okay, so you can still use Agonizing Blast. You can still do lots of juicy damage. You're just not going to get Eldritch Blast immediately. You have to go to Pact of the Tome at level 3, or you have to get it from Spell Sniper at level 2, or whatever your feat levels are. Repelling Blast has gotten the same treatment as Agonizing Blast, except it just works on any cantrip. Doesn't have to be not a weapon attack. Any cantrip, and it moves the target 3 meters down from 4.5. So the movement is a little bit less, so it's a little bit harder to knock things into pits and get instant kills, but it also works on anything, including stuff like Booming Blade. So you can now take Booming Blade, Repelling Blast, and knock them back, and now they have to approach you again to attack, and they take the extra Booming Blade damage. This is a very, very fun feat. You can also use it with like Ray of Frost, if you get that from an item or whatever, and that will let you knock them back, slow them, and they're going to have to walk over an ice surface most likely, right? Very, very strong. Now, the Pact of the Tome has received some buffs, as I said, and here are the buffs. At level 3, you're going to unlock a book. It's like a spell that you cast to read your tome, and you unlock that chapter's spell list. So at level 3, you're going to gain the first chapter, which comes with Eldritch Blast, Guidance, and Thorn Whip. So you've got your big damage, you've got your big utility, and you have a bonus action source of damage and utility. Chapter 2, which is unlocked with Deepened Pact at level 5, gives you Animate Dead, Glyph of Warding, and Haste. And remember, these can be cast with Warlock spell slots, so they don't have a cooldown. So you can haste yourself twice in a combat or whatever, or you can haste someone else, and then you can cast a Glyph of Warding, or you can summon a bunch of Animate Deads or whatever, right? You can do this more than once. This is nice because this is effectively like a fireball, but you can use lightning, so it's a fireball that can be doubled in a nice area. Like there's a lot of stuff you can do here, but you're limited by your Warlock spell slots. Chapter 3, which is unlocked at level 9 with a Deepest Pact passive, you get Artistry of War and Dethrone. These are the two scrolls that are found in Sorcerer's Sundries that are crazy. They're both very good. Artistry of War still has a short rest cooldown on it, so you can only cast it once. It's also been nerfed for non-wizards. If you're a wizard, you're going to get all the way up to 6 projectiles from it, but if you're any other class that isn't a wizard, you're only going to get 3 projectiles. It is still a ridiculously strong spell. And Dethrone has not been nerfed at all. I think it has a long rest cooldown, if I'm not mistaken, but if it doesn't, Dethrone is just insanely strong. It's like up to 80 necrotic damage or something. It's crazy. And these also cost your Warlock spell slots. Very cool. Pact of the Tome is a lot of fun. Now, Pact of the Blade also has some buffs. Your Summon Pact weapon is significantly different. Each weapon has a new damage type, and they are all automatically +1 enhancement bonus weapons. So they're all +1 enchanted weapons, and they all come with a unique damage type. So like the hammer, I think, is like force damage. You have a flail that deals cold damage, and so on, right? All of them have a unique weapon damage type, so you can actually use this if you want to like take 3 levels of Warlock and then a bunch of levels of Rogue. You can get specific damage type sneak attacks if that's something that you're interested in and want to do. It's pretty cool. At level 5, you're going to get extra attack. This is not attached to martial prowess. You're just going to get your normal Deepened Pact extra attack. So you do have to take 5 levels of Warlock in order to get extra attack through the class. At level 9, Deepest Pact, you get Banishing Smite. This is usually locked to Hexblade Warlocks only, but it is now part of Pact of the Blade overall. And you're going to cast this with Warlock spell slots. So that's a very, very, very big smite damage attack. It's like 5d10, I think, is what the damage is. It's crazy. Pact of the Chain now has been completely reworked, though. You get new summon variants limited by your subclass. So Hexblades get a Hexed Greatsword. It's just a floating Greatsword. Honestly, I should probably buff this and do some more with it. It just hits stuff and it just flies around. That's it. That's it. Great Old Ones, they get an Intellect Devourer. This is obviously going to get replaced by Us when you're later on in the game, because Us is amazing and this one's not quite as good. But you get this very early on. Archfey, they get a Mud Mephit. This felt like the most Fey-like of the creatures that aren't Meanlocks, which Meanlocks just feel too intimidating to add to a level 3 character. They feel too good. They also come with like the ability to paralyze when they hit stuff. They can fear things. They're just a little too strong. The Mud Mephits instead are a little chaotic. They explode when they die. They can summon extra versions of themselves. Lots of fun. Okay. Archfey, they get Mud Mephits. Fiends, they get Imps. Just like normal. I kind of think that's bad. I think they could probably use a buff too, but I don't know. It's not super necessary that these be amazing because Pact of the Chain does not have limitations like it does in vanilla. It actually gets really strong, and we'll see why in a second. Finally, Quasits, the option has just been removed. The only way to summon a Quasit now is through Shovel, and that just makes sense. Shovel is already really good. It's really cool, and if you're any of the other Warlocks, you already get to summon a Quasit through Shovel, so there's no reason to have a generic Quasit when you have this unique, cool one that will cuss at you. It's great. At level 5, Pact of the Chain gets Deepened Pact. They have a new buff spell that can only target summons, and it grants the summoned target extra attack and a 15 temp HP Armor of Agathis. Now what this means is you can summon a thing, give it extra attack, and give it Armor of Agathis. And the Armor of Agathis will mean if something hits it, they take 15 cold damage, right? Which you can double to 30 if you want. That's really strong. But notice, grants the summoned target can only target summons. This is not limited to these summons. It's not limited. So if you have, say, a Beastmaster Ranger in your party, you can use your Deepened Pact ability to grant that Beastmaster's companion extra attack and Armor of Agathis. If you have, say, a Minor Elemental, you can give it extra attack and Armor of Agathis. If you have an Elemental, you can give it extra attack and Armor of Agathis. If you have a Myrmidon from a Druid, you can do the same thing. You get the point. Any summon that you can summon, you can give it extra attack and Armor of Agathis. But it does cost an action and a bonus action, so it's going to be really expensive to cast in combat. So there is that. But that's crazy. Later on, there is an invocation that lets you summon an elemental, conjure elemental, right? You can give it extra attack and Armor of Agathis. It's crazy strong. It's super good. At level 9, you get Deepest Pact, and that gives you another new buff spell that can only target summons. This one grants the summon target resistance to physical damage for 5 turns at the cost of an action once per short rest. It also grants the target a +3 bonus to all of their base stats. Now, just like I said, summons from all sources can be targeted by these buffs, including Scratch, Shovel, Us, Minor Elementals, Elementals, Myrmidons, Nature Spirits, Animal Companions, Undead, Planar Allies, etc. The summons do not have to be from yourself either. Anyone in your party can summon them, and you can buff the crap out of them. It's important to note the extra attack is unique. The Armor of Agathis, I don't know if that part's unique. I think you can apply Armor of Agathis to any of your companions, but I think to apply extra attack, it can only one summon can have it. I think. Let's move on. Sorcerers. These received much less extensive changes. The Draconic Bloodline Sorcerer gets a new Sorcerer's Breath Weapon. It's a new Breath Weapon ability that costs a bonus action and a sorcery point to use. And when you use it, you unlock Draconic Claws. When you use your new breath weapon, your unarmed strikes turn into claw attacks for 5 turns, dealing additional damage based on your draconic ancestry. Your unarmed attacks will then use your charisma for attack and damage rolls, unless you're a monk. This means you can be a brawling, up in your face, punching stuff sorcerer, which is wild. And it will use your charisma, so your spellcasting doesn't have to suffer, which is really cool. The damage also scales quite well, which is nice. At level 6, you also unlock Draconic Elemental Weapon. This is the same Draconic Elemental Weapon spell from the Drakethroat Glaive. It doesn't cost a spell slot to use. It lasts until long rest, and it's unique. I don't think you can apply it to more than one thing. Maybe you can twin it to more than one item. I think you can twin it to more than one item, but you can only use it once per long rest. At level 6, you also deal additional damage with your Sorcerer's Breath weapon. Wild Magic. At level 6, you can summon a Gramishka with 13 hit points to fight with you. It's going to react to your spells just like a Wild Gramishka, which really means you're summoning a Gramishka that will probably turn into a Panther. This summon only lasts for 10 turns because it's insane. Insane. Storm Sorcery. At level 3, they get Tempestuous Magic Static Charge. When you cast a spell or cantrip, you generate 2 lightning charges. So they get to be the lightning charge genius. I don't know. They get to do a lot with lightning charges. Okay, another big class that receives some changes is the Wild Magic Barbarian. And just the Barbarian. So first off, Rage no longer costs anything to use. You have to use a rage charge, of course, but it's now a free action. So the reason I did that is if Blade Singers can activate their Blade Song as a free action, why can't the angry man just get angry for free? Yeah, so rage is a free action. Anyway, Wild Magic Barbarian got some huge changes. It is now a half caster. It's a caster. Wild Magic Barbarian is a caster. It's so cool. And they're a half caster. It's weird, but they're a half caster. Their big claim to fame, though, is not that they're a half caster. It's that they have these new abilities called Meta Rages. Unlocked at levels 4, 7, and 10 Barbarian, these toggleable passives offer new powers at the cost of rage charges. So they also gain additional rage charges. At level 3, you can unlock Distant, Empowered, Extended, or Subtle. Distant extends the range of your melee weapon and unarmed attacks by a lot. You can hit at like 6 meters or something like that. Like you can hit from very far, which is a lot of fun. It doesn't extend the area of effect of like a cleave or whatever, or a blue flame blade, but it does extend how far you can hit it from, which is really fun. It costs 1 rage charge to use, I think, each turn, or not each turn, each attack, but it's very cool. Empowered just adds 1d12 to your weapon or unarmed damage. This works with ranged attacks and unarmed attacks and melee attacks, of course. This is basically a smite for barbarians. So you spend 1 rage charge, you get 1d12 to your weapon or unarmed damage. Extended. This causes a wild magic surge from a unique wild magic table on your next attack. Because rage is a free action, you can just kind of cycle through your own rages if you want, but this gives a unique one. So this list is closer to the sorcerer list than it is the wild magic barbarian list. So I think you can summon a Cambion. I think you can do some other stuff. I know that you can cast Thunder Wave with it, which is really funny because you're just gonna like hit an enemy and it's gonna pop off this random effect and it's gonna be a Thunder Wave. And the direction of Thunder Wave is not predictable. Sometimes it goes backwards, sometimes it goes in the direction you attacked. It just happens. I don't really know how it decides which direction it's going. So this is kind of fun. This is the gamble for fun. Subtle is another gamble for fun. It's unlockable at level 3. 1 rage charge per attack roll, and it reduces the number needed to roll a critical hit by 4. So if you want to go crazy with the crits, Wild Magic Barbarian with Subtle. This is crazy. It's not guaranteed crits, but you can reduce it by 4. And then if you stack that with some other armors that I made that reduce it by 2, and maybe some spell sniper or some deadly alacrity feats and some other stuff, I think you can get the number you need to roll a critical down to probably like 8 or something crazy. Like you can get a lot of critical hits thanks to this. Quickened. This is unlockable at level 5, which doesn't make sense because I said you can unlock them at level 4, 7, and 10. And these all say 3. So this is a lie. I don't know. You'll unlock them when you unlock them. Quickened, it costs 2 rage charges, and you can just cast a spell as a bonus action. Classic. You spend 2 rage charges, cast a spell. Careful, this is unlocked at level 5 as well. I don't believe this. I don't know which one of these is correct. Costs 1 rage charge, and after your next attack or spell, you grant yourself advantage on all saving throws for 3 turns. Clearly, Quickened is the better one. But Careful can make you a little bit tankier if you want that. Furious Conversion, this is an ability unlocked at level 4, and it allows you to convert spell slots into rage charges. I think level 4 is accurate. I think that's right. I think these numbers are right. So 4, 7, and then you get an extra choice of one of these at level 10. That is right. Anyway, Furious Conversion, you can turn spell slots into rage charges. Crucially, you cannot turn rage charges into spell slots. Only the other way around. This is not a sorcerer. You can't go points to spells and spells to points and points to spells and back and forth. You can only go spells to rage charges. You also have a passive called Rage Casting. Your Wild Magic Rage does not prevent you from casting spells while raging. Instead, you deal 2 additional damage with non-weapon attack spells while raging. The Blade cantrips already inherit the normal weapon damage bonuses, so you don't have to worry about that. But what this means is if you are a Wild Magic Barbarian and you want to Magic Missile, you get 2 additional damage on each projectile, and you're a half caster, so you get up to level 3 casts, and then you can add in the Psychic Spark. Now you've got a level 4 effective Magic Missile, and you can add in 2 damage to every projectile. That's really strong. That's 3, 4, 5, 6 projectiles plus 2, that's 12 damage. Or you can use a Scorching Ray, and you get 2 additional damage, and so on and so forth. This just makes their spell casting ever so slightly better than it would be, specifically for damage. It's also important to note that they are a charisma caster, like their class would suggest. They are a half caster sorcerer is the best way to think about them, if that wasn't already obvious. I've duplicated this note. That's fun. Wild Magic Barbarian, still on it, still a half caster. Their spell lists are all chosen from the sorcerer spell lists. Their spell slots are the exact same as a half caster progression for paladins. So you unlock spells at level 2, except you unlock them at level 3. You get 3 level 1 spell slots at level 3. Level 5, you get your level 2 spell slots, and at level 9, you get your level 3 spell slots. That is how it works. When you pick the class, you get to pick 2 blade or bow cantrips and 2 spells from the level 1 spell list. So they have access to the entire blade and bow cantrip list, but they don't have any other cantrips. It's just these, just blade and bow. That's all. Still excellent choices, though, especially since there's 2 new ones in Chocolate Edition version 4, Thundering String and Blizzard Blitz. So they get to be, whatever you want. And then you get 2 spells from the level 1 spell list. At level 4, you pick 2 meta rage options, and you unlock Furious Conversion, and you gain an additional rage charge. At level 5, you get to pick 2 spells from the level 2 spell list. At level 6, you get Bolstering Magic. That's a vanilla feature. Level 7, you get to pick 1 new meta rage from the full list, and you get an additional rage charge. At level 8, you pick 1 new spell from the level 2 spell list. At level 9, you get Bolstering Magic again, so this is another vanilla feature. And you get 2 spells from the level 3 spell list. And at level 10, you get 1 additional meta rage from the full list. This is accurate. This progression is correct. This stuff, this is level 4, and this is level 7. These Bolstering Magic features give you additional spell slots, by the way. You can use them to give allies additional spell slots, or you can use them to give yourself additional spell slots, which again, you can turn into rage charges so you can use your features more often while being raged. Okay, let's move on to the next one. This is the Circle of the Land Druid, and it gets a new really cool feature called Shaping the Wilds. These are class action spells, and there's 7 options. This is the method for the Circle of the Land Druid to spend their wild shape charges. All of the other druids had a unique way to spend their wild shape charges, either spending them as a bonus action to turn into a bear or whatever, or spending them as an action or a bonus action to go all fungal mode and get extra damage on your weapon attacks, or you could spend them to turn into the starry forms. Circle of the Land didn't have any unique version of wild shape charges. So this is their version of that, and it is shaping the wilds instead of wild shaping. Haha, get it? Anyway, 7 options. Cragfield. This is a permanent wall of stone. That's it. Permanent wall of stone. Mudslide. It creates a gigantic, permanent mud surface, and it flings mud at enemies, dealing bludgeoning damage, but it doesn't cause muddy. That's it. You fling mud, and it's huge. Sunburn. A daylight variant that deals radiant damage in a massive area of effect, and it deals 1d4 fire and 1d4 radiant damage. But it does require concentration, which is more so that you can end it if you want, not anything else. If you want to kill Cazador, Sunburn. Valley Fog, probably the most broken ability I have ever made. It is the most gargantuan fog cloud that blinds everything inside it and has a chance to make enemies go mad on initial cast. The save DC on Madness is whatever your spell save DC is, -3 because of how insanely potent this can be. But also, oh my gosh, when you cover a room in fog cloud, enemies really don't want to be in the fog cloud. And sometimes there's this like 1 pixel where they can stand where they're not in the fog cloud, and they will not move from that spot. It's insane. Valley Fog is the most broken ability I've ever made. It's probably too strong. You should absolutely go play with it and see what happens in all the different arenas with it, because it's so funny. And my God, is it a big... it's such a big fog cloud. I cannot express to you. Think about the Blighted Village with the windmill. You can cover the entire windmill in fog, okay? It's huge. Overgrowth. This is another massive permanent plant growth. It can still be burned, but it's huge. Undying Vines. This is another permanent surface effect, and it lets you summon a huge surface of shadow-cursed vines. And finally, Arctic Blast. This is a gust of wind variant that deals cold damage on top of blowing clouds and stuff away. Basically, you just get to knock stuff back, and it's a big cold damage spell. Very fun. You get to learn 3 of these at most, and you learn 1 at level 3, 1 at 6, and 1 at 9. Shaping the Wilds. Absolutely nuts. Most of this is overpowered, to be honest, okay? Oh, hey, look, more Barbarian changes. The Berserker Barbarian gets a new effect. Generate 1 turn of Wrath every time you make a melee weapon attack while frenzied. This... if you don't know what Wrath is +1 weapon damage, maybe unarmed damage, per turn of Wrath, right? But the key here is that you only generate these turns every time you make a melee weapon attack. So this is not a throw Zerker. This is to make the melee Berserker much better. Because normally when you go melee Berserker, every time you make an attack with a weapon, a melee weapon attack, you lose... accuracy. You get a -1 penalty to your attack rolls for the rest of your rage. So now you take a -1 penalty to your accuracy, but you get a +1 turn, but you get +1 point to your damage. So this ends up being quite potent. You end up less accurate, but more damaging. Yeah, that's it. Berserker Barbarian. College of Swords Bard. Their ranged version of Slashing Flourish can no longer target the same enemy twice. It was OP, and we all knew it. But at level 6, as part of losing their extra attack, they are gaining Melodic Flourish, which is, when you use a flourish, you begin singing, granting nearby allies plus 1d4 bonus to attack rolls and saving throws. This is the same exact effect as Valor Eluve, and it does not stack. You basically become a walking bless, though, after using one of your flourishes at level 6. That is very powerful, and as a reminder, they have martial prowess, so they gain extra attack at level 9. They don't completely lose it, they're actually gaining power here. They are losing the really overpowered archery build, though. For a number of reasons. This isn't the only reason their archery is less powerful. College of Valor Bard. At level 6, instead of their extra attack there, which they're going to get at level 9, remember, level 9, they're going to get Heroic Deeds. After you inspire an ally with combat inspiration, your next weapon attack deals additional damage equal to your Bard level. That's really strong. It gets you up to 12 extra damage, which is quite a lot. That's the equivalent of like a 4d6 rider, and you can do that 5 or 6 times per combat. assuming you short rest in between combats, which you're a bard, so I don't know why you wouldn't. So that's pretty strong. You inspire your ally, it incentivizes you to inspire your ally and then to go attack something. Kind of cool. Heroic deeds. Valor bards also get to choose a fighting style, and they can choose from archery, dueling, or protection. And actually, this also includes light weapon fighting, which we'll talk about later. But light weapon fighting is a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls with light weapons. So they get archery, dueling, protection, and light weapon fighting. Finally, they get a fortitude passive, which increases their hit points by 1 per bard level. So an extra 12 HP. They get to be kind of a mixture of a tanky and a damage dealing bard. They're kind of a fighter plus bard. I don't know. They're pretty good. Circle of Stars druids, they got a little bit of a nerf. Dazzling Breath has reduced damage scaling to 2d4 to 44, down from 2d6 to 46. A free bonus action every turn area of effect spell was just way too strong. Every turn you would use a bonus action to do 46 radiant damage. What? That's crazy. Even 44 is still really, really good. For the Chalice Druid, Cure Wounds no longer triggers Chalice Healing from Stars Druid because Cure Wounds no longer spends a spell slot. And we're on to the Cleric. These aren't in alphabetical order, but if they were, I'd feel really slow. Cleric, general change for a few of the subclasses. Potent Spellcasting now adds your Wisdom modifier to non-weapon cantrip damage as radiant damage specifically. So this is like Agonizing Blast, but it is for clerics. It comes at level 8 on light clerics and knowledge clerics, and I think that's it, clerics. Yeah. Subclass changes. Trickery Domain. Their Invoke Duplicity is completely reworked. Instead, it's a toggleable passive. You click it, or you do... What do you do with a controller? Button it? I don't know. You click it, it turns on, it turns itself off, and you make a roll for a DC 16 deception check to impress your god. You try and trick them. If you pass the check, you can cast any spell as a free action. If you fail the check, you can cast a cantrip as a free action. It's limited to once per turn. I say that, but did I actually limit it to once per turn? I don't know. You'll have to find out. I don't remember making that change, but I did put the note, so hopefully that's the case. Hopefully that's the case. The key here is that it costs a channel divinity charge to use, so you can only use it at most 2 or 3 times in a short rest. So usually you're only going to get to do it once, and it's oh, I cast Fear and I disarmed 2 enemies, but not the really big bad ones, so I'm going to invoke Duplicity and hope to pass this deception check, which is a charisma check, remember, not a wisdom check. I'm going to try and pass this check and get another Fear off to stop Merkel from using his gigantic scythe or whatever, right? That's kind of what it's there for. Or you use it and you're I can Sacred Flame again. Sick. At level 3, your Pass Without Trace is replaced with Shadow Blade. Pass Without Trace is great, but it's also niche, and it's somewhat redundant with the level 1 class feature, which gives you advantage on stealth checks. You don't need... Pass Without Trace is better than that level 1 class feature, but I don't know. Let the Ranger run Pass Without Trace instead. The next one is War Cleric. War Clerics have a new passive called Hardened War Priest. This is not super necessary anymore, but anyway, War Priest charges now regenerate on short rest. So now they can get a bonus action attack up to 5 times per combat, or 6 times per combat or something. It's pretty crazy. This is especially crazy because now they're going to get extra attack at level 10 thanks to martial prowess. So if you go all the way up, you're going to end up with extra attack and up to 6 bonus action attacks. Of course, you could always just play a fighter and end up with 3 attacks every single turn, or you could play you can do that anyway. It's not like this is something new, but it's really powerful. Anyway, Hardened War Priest. Knowledge Clerics, they get this neat feature. They can learn 2 wizards from the wizard spell list whenever they gain a new level of spell slot up to 5th level spells. So they get to learn 10 wizard spells. I think they're prepared just like the rest of their spells are, so you don't always have them active. You have to choose to have them active, but you still get to learn them. So you can be kind of like a wizardy cleric. You can't learn spells from scrolls, but you can learn wizard spells. So very strong. They get a lot of versatility from that. All right, let's move on to the next page, and the wizard class and their subclass changes. These are small changes because wizards are mostly fine thanks to all the spell changes, but some of the subclasses did get a little bit of a buff. For example, the Conjuration subclass receives a buff to its Create Water version, which is now a bonus action rather than an action. This makes comboing of lightning damage as a Conjuration wizard significantly easier, which is very strong, though it does compete with the lightning damage cantrip, so you've got to use spells like Witch Bolt, which is very good now, or Lightning Bolt, or Chain Lightning, or whatever. Create Water this way also has a short rest cooldown, so it's not terribly strong. You just get to use it once and then blast them, and if they're not dead yet, well, you're still a full wizard. Enchantment Wizards, Hypnotic Gaze, receives a +2 bonus to its spell save DC. This doesn't sound like much, but this ability can actually win battles on its own, and I think you unlock it pretty early. So the +2 save DC just makes it more reliable in the early game before you get a bunch of spell save DC boosting gear, and in the late game it just makes it very, very powerful against some very strong bosses. Illusion gets a pretty big change. This is Gale's class, and it just needed some juice. The level 10 feature, Illusory Self, has actually been moved to level 2. This is a once per short rest ability to make any attack against your wizard miss, which is really strong. At level 6, they get the ability to see in darkness, both magical and non-magical, and they can see invisibility. And at level 10, they get Greater Illusory Self, which automatically casts Mirror Image on yourself when you use Illusory Self. So you get to make an attack miss and then gain 9 armor class at the same time. That might be a little too strong. I don't know. It's still an illusion wizard. It's a lot of fun, and this fits Gale very well. Continuing on with the wizards, you got the Necromancy subclass, which can now summon a Death Shepherd at level 6. The Death Shepherd has 28 base health, 20 temp HP, and Necrotic Veil plus Undead Ward aura, which makes them very strong, just like the NPCs. The spell cannot be upcast, and it requires specifically a level 3 spell slot, so you only get 3 of these per day unless you regen your level 3 spell slots through some source. I believe the Death Shepherd can summon its own undead as well. Like it can cast No Rest for the Wicked. I believe it can cast No Rest for the Wicked. So I think it should be pretty strong. At the very least, it makes you very Necromancer coded. Transmutation Wizards. At level 2, they get Medicine Expertise if you have proficiency from some source, which is very nice. They might just automatically get Expertise. I think it's supposed to require you to have some source of proficiency already, but don't quote me on it, even though it's clearly you can quote me on it. Level 6. At level 6, Transmutation Wizards also get a new cantrip called Transmuter's Stone Throw. This is a new cantrip with a combined animation and sound effects. I basically made this cantrip from scratch. I just used a combination of effects and animations and stuff from other spells. It's a short-range magical throw of a sharp stone that deals 1d12 plus intelligence modifier as its base damage, and it scales all the way up to 3d12 plus your intelligence modifier at normal cantrip levels. It deals bludgeoning damage. It is very, very powerful, but it is pretty short range, but it also looks friggin' awesome. Sounds awesome to use too. It's like you launch a rock like a bullet. Like, it's sick. I love it. Blade Singer Wizard. As part of the Martial Prowess system, they've been updated. Their level 10 Song of Defense feature has been moved to level 6. So they can now spend spell slots to reduce damage starting at level 6. And at level 10, they now gain their regular extra attack from Martial Prowess, as well as their Blade Singer's extra attack, which allows them to cast a cantrip as a part of their extra attack combination. This is very powerful. They can attack twice with a weapon, or they can use like a booming blade and a weapon attack, or they can use a firebolt and a weapon attack, or whatever, right? They can use a weapon attack and a cantrip, or 2 weapon attacks. Very, very powerful. Possibly too strong. But now that it's at level 10, it's a little more balanced. Getting that at level 6, as you did in version 3, was definitely too strong. Okay, we've got some more changes for the Ranger, specifically for a couple subclasses here. But first up, several of the Ranger's classic spells have been buffed or reworked. So Hail of Thorns, Ensnaring Strike, Conjure Barrage, and Lightning Arrow are noticeably buffed, but these are not the same as the instinctual spells, and they mostly just affect NPCs. For example, the Warden in Moonrise Tower uses Lightning Arrow, as you probably have experienced, but that Lightning Arrow now works with extra attack, so she's going to Lightning Smite you twice. Good luck. Beastmaster Rangers also get a nice little buff. There's a mod that I made called Cat's Panther. It was a commission. It was great. I really enjoyed making it. And it adds a Panther familiar as one of the options. And it has the ability to prowl, which makes them invisible. And when they're prowling, their jugular strike deals additional damage. They're basically a rogue familiar, which is kind of cool. They can also pounce to potentially knock enemies prone, and they scale at normal Beastmaster Ranger companion levels. Additionally, Beastmaster Ranger companions, I believe, now get extra attack at level 8 instead of level 11. There is a known issue here with their extra attack being moved to level 8 instead of level 11, and that's it will resummon a version of your companion that does not have extra attack. Resummoning them will grant them extra attack again, though. I guess they get tired after standing watch over you all night, so you need to give them a little rest nightly. I don't remember if I fixed this issue. I think I might have. I know that I fixed this issue for Cat's Panther, so the Panther that you can get, but I don't know if that happens for the others. I don't remember. It requires Osiris fixing, which is much more dangerous to edit and mess with, and I'm not confident in my abilities to do that, so I only added the ability to resummon this every night, and when you level up, not... I don't think I changed these guys. Yeah, sorry about that. Hunter Ranger, Giant Killer. This is one of the passives that you get to choose instead of like Horde Breaker or whatever. You can spend a reaction point to make a melee attack against any enemy that makes a melee attack against you, up from only large or bigger enemies. This is effectively riposte. This is effectively riposte. It's very powerful. Very worth taking now, possibly more worth taking than the other ones. They don't even have to miss you, if this wording is to be believed. You just have to be there, and they just have to try and attack you. And if they do, you get to attack as well. Very, very powerful. You can combine this with the alert feat, which we'll go over in a bit, which gives you an extra reaction, and bam, you have extra attack with your reaction. That's kind of crazy. Okay, Archfey Warlock. They've gotten a change. Their Fey Presence ability now allows you to combine the effects of both vanilla versions. So enemies in the area around the Warlock make saving throws independently against Charmed and Frightened, because the Archfey can be both beautiful and terrifying. This has recently been bug fixed too. This works and is pretty good. It's pretty cool. Okay, here is a major change. We're about to get into the spell changes. As you can see, spell rebalance. And one of the big changes in Chocolate Edition from vanilla is that weapon cantrips have different rules. They're more like tabletop than they are like Baldur's Gate 3 vanilla. Okay, so all weapon cantrips now require a full action to cast and cannot be used to trigger or take advantage of extra attack. Some notes: Bladesinger's extra attack is now able to cast a cantrip as part of their combo. We already went over that. Eldritch Knight's War Magic can cast a second blade cantrip with their bonus action, even if they trigger the effect by casting a weapon cantrip. So they can still do two. They can do 2 booming blades, which is kind of crazy. War Domain Cleric's War Priest charges cannot be used to cast a weapon cantrip, and Quicken spells can, of course, still be used to cast a weapon cantrip. Now, as part of this, many of the weapon cantrips are upgraded. They can now be dual wielded for the most part. This means that casting the cantrip while dual wielding is toggled on will consume an action and a bonus action, unless you have the 2-up in fighting style, which we'll talk about later. Each of the dual wieldable cantrips receives bonus damage equal to the offhand weapon's damage in a type appropriate to the spell. Lightning Strike receives lightning damage, Zephyr Shot receives force, Sunfletched receives radiant, Booming Blade and Blue Flame Blade receive weapon damage. Some other thoughts on this: there are many ways that you can combine weapon cantrips with other actions in Chocolate Edition, such as the offhanded feat, which we're going to talk about later, Bladesinger's extra attack, War Cleric's extra attack on bonus actions, War Magic, etc. Like, there's so many ways that you can still do a weapon cantrip plus something, or Arcane Trickster's ability to use 2 weapon cantrips, for example. There's lots of ways to do that. Okay, now on to the actual cantrips. These are going to be the rebalanced ones, and I believe new cantrips as well. So let's go through. Acid Splash. This is now just a simple 1d6 damage, but there's no saving throw. This spell deals guaranteed damage, barring resistance or immunity. It is very, very powerful. It is old faithful, old reliable. If you need to hit something, you just Acid Splash. It's kind of like Magic Missile, but it's a 1d6 and it scales up to 3d6 at the normal levels of 5 and 10. It is very, very powerful. Blade Ward. This now costs a bonus action down from an action, but it has a once per combat cooldown, and it now scales. So at levels 5 and 10, Blade Ward will last for 1 turn longer to a maximum of 4 turns at level 10. Importantly, this can be extended as a sorcerer, so you can extend it to up to 8 turns, which makes Blade Ward very valuable, even with the once per combat cooldown. It's very fun. It's a little more flexible than it was before. Booming Blade has had 1 damage added from levels 1 to 4, just so that, it deals some thunder damage. It just feels wrong. Just feels wrong that it didn't have anything extra. Bone Chill, like many of the damaging cantrips, now deals 1d6 damage plus proficiency bonus before scaling. So then it's going to do 2d6 plus proficiency, 3d6, and so on. This averages 1 additional damage over the vanilla cantrips, which is powerful, of course, but it just makes the minimum damage much better. It's 1 plus 2, so 3 to 9. So 3 to 8 damage instead of 1 to 8 damage. It just feels better. Dancing Lights does not require concentration anymore, and it applies the effect of sunlight in its area now, like a miniature daylight spell. Firebolt deals 1d8 plus proficiency bonus before scaling, so damage cantrips generally have lost 1 die size and then gain proficiency bonus, and that's true for pretty much all of them. Guidance, it no longer requires concentration. Poison Spray deals 1d10 plus proficiency bonus. Produce Flame deals 1d10 plus proficiency, and no longer removes itself without dismissing it on purpose, which is very nice. You don't have to click twice now to use this, or 3 times, or whatever. And as a bonus, you can also dip your weapon in the produced flame like it's a candle, which makes it a very good idea to just have it on. Nice little quality of life right there. Ray of Frost deals 1d6 plus proficiency. Resistance has the same conditions as Blade Ward. It costs an action down from a bonus action and has a once per combat cooldown, but still requires concentration. Because of that, it lasts 10 turns and it does not scale. Sacred Flame is now an attack roll instead of a saving throw, and it deals 1d8 plus proficiency bonus damage before scaling. So it's the same as a Firebolt, it just deals radiant damage. Shillelagh. This is permanent and can be used on any and all simple weapons, including light crossbows and short bows. The damage is unchanged, and a caster can only apply 1 Shillelagh at a time. This has resulted in really fun situations where I like to swap back and forth between melee and ranged combat, and you can do that just by swapping to your melee weapon and casting Shillelagh and then attacking. If you get crafty, though, this could be used in conjunction with like a pacted weapon or key weapon of some kind for some dual-wield shenanigans for a lot of fun. Shocking Grasp. This deals 1d4 damage plus proficiency bonus, and it only costs a bonus action to use. So if you're a melee wizard or whatever, you can get in there, Shocking Grasp. If you hit it, you can run away because they can't take a reaction. It's really nice and rewards playing a little more aggressively up in the enemy's face. Thorn Whip. This now also costs a bonus action down from an action, and it deals 1d4 plus 1, then 2d4 plus 2, then 3d4 plus 3. So it has 1 less than your proficiency bonus when it scales. Sorrowful Lash has also gotten a change. This is a Thorn Whip variant attached to the Sorrow Glaive in Act 1. This version has no cooldown. It costs a bonus action to cast, and it deals 1d8 plus 1, 1d10 plus 1, and then 1d12 plus 1. So it's like very similar scaling at the high end, 3d4 versus 1d12. But in the early game, it is just a sick bonus action. Like 1d8 plus 1 is very strong as a bonus action. Every single turn, right? True Strike. This now costs a bonus action to cast, but it also has that once per battle cooldown. However, it also isn't consumed on attack against the target. At levels 5 and 10, True Strike can be cast on an additional target, up to 3 targets at level 10. This isn't super relevant, but sometimes you cast True Strike and then you kill them, and it's like, bummer. So I gave you a second target so you can cast it on 2 people, you kill one, and then you move on to the other. Vicious Mockery deals 1d8 plus proficiency bonus and damage. The damage change does not apply, however, to Dirty Trick Vicious Mockery. This is still 1d4 plus. The damage change only sort of applies to Dirty Trick Vicious Mockery, though. It is a 1d4 plus proficiency instead of 1d8 plus proficiency. Now, there are a bunch of new cantrips that I made, and these are mostly, actually, I think they're all weapon cantrips. Let's go over them. First up, there's Lightning Strike. It's a melee blade cantrip that converts your weapon damage into lightning damage and builds 2 to 4 lightning charges when you land a hit with it and deals up to 2d6 additional lightning damage. It's available to sorcerers, wizards, warlocks, rangers, and druids. You can, of course, double the damage on this, which is insane. It doesn't deal as much as a fully maxed out booming blade, but it is ridiculously strong, and again, you can double it super easily. Blue Flame Blade. Sheath your weapon in blue fire and strike your foe, dealing weapon damage and burning them for up to 2d8 fire damage. The flame then jumps to a nearby enemy and deals an additional up to 3d8 fire damage. This is very similar to Green Flame Blade, of course, but instead of using your charisma modifier or your spellcasting modifier or whatever, we're just using damage dice. It's available to sorcerers, wild magic barbarians, rangers, and warlocks. I should add... Lightning Strike is also available to Wild Magic Barbarian. All blade and bow cantrips are available to Wild Magic Barbs. Blizzard Blitz. Rush forward, creating a sheet of ice in your wake. Strike the first enemy in your way, dealing up to 2d6 additional cold damage. This is a control and movement-oriented cantrip. It's available to sorcerers, Wild Magic Barbs, warlocks, and druids. Sunfletch Strike. This is a bow cantrip, which are blade cantrips, but for bows and crossbows. Sunfletch Strike is a bow cantrip that converts your weapon damage into radiant damage, kind of like the 2025 True Strike, as far as I understand. This also inflicts 2 turns of Radiating Orb on an enemy, and deals 1, then 1d6, then 2d6 additional radiant damage. This is sort of a defensive, because it's got that Radiating Orb proc, and it doesn't deal as much damage, only up to 2d6, but it can, of course, be twinned by sorcerers. It is available to clerics and rangers and druids. It's very powerful. It's very fun. This is probably my favorite of the cantrips, personally. If you've seen Sonny and Paul, you'll see why. It's freaking great. Thundering String. This is a new one in version 4. I should add, Blizzard Blitz is a new one in version 4. Thundering String. Instead of firing an arrow, you fire your bow or crossbow with a crack of thundering magic, dealing half of your weapon damage, plus up to 3d4 thunder damage in an extremely narrow cone in front of you. This is an area of effect attack roll cantrip. So you deal half of your weapon damage, plus 1d4, then 2d4, then 3d4 thunder damage in a narrow cone in front of you. And when I say narrow, I mean it is extremely narrow. It can be very hard to line up more than 2 or 3 enemies with this cantrip. And if you only hit 2 enemies, the damage is like, it's all right until you get some things that will affect your cantrip damage. It's available to sorcerers, wild magic barbarians, rangers, and druids. Next up for the bow cantrips, we have Zephyr Shot. This is based on a level 1 tabletop spell called Zephyr Strike, and this is a bow cantrip that deals an additional 1, then 1d8, or 2d8 force damage on top of your weapon's damage. If you land a hit with this cantrip, you gain an additional 3 meters of movement speed. It's available to wizards, sorcerers, warlocks, and wild magic barbarians. This is a very fun cantrip. It's not noted here, but this cantrip can go around walls. It fires effectively a magic missile. So you can shoot people without seeing them. It's kind of crazy. It's a little overpowered, but it only deals up to 2d8 extra force damage. You don't get extra attack with it. So sometimes it's really good. Sometimes it's not as good. The extra movement speed on it is a lot of fun, though. Finally, for the bow cantrips, so that we have booming blades not listed here, obviously, but you have 4 blade cantrips and now 4 bow cantrips. The 4th bow cantrip is Toxic Barrage. Transmute an arrow into a barrage of poisoned barbs fired at your enemy, dealing 2 to 7 poison damage and hitting up to 4 times. You start out at 2 times, and it scales to 4 at levels 5 and 10. The target count increases as your cantrip scale. Yep. It's available to sorcerers, wild magic barbs, rangers, druids, and transmutation wizards. To better support this cantrip without allowing all weapon riders to apply, the following changes have been made. First, Symbiotic Entity now applies specifically to Toxic Barrage as well as weapon and unarmed attacks. So that's an extra 2d6 at level 2 if you have Toxic Barrage, which is insane. That turns this into a 4d6 cantrip. That's probably too strong. The Poisoner's Ring, when you deal poison damage, you now deal an additional 1 poison damage. So that turns this into 3 to 8 per barb, and you get 4 barbs, so that's crazy. Then there's Poisoner's Robe. It already works, no changes. So that's 1d4 on each barb. The Potent Robe works, adding your Charisma modifier to each barb, so up to 4 times your Charisma modifier added in total. And Poison Ancestry also works, adding your Charisma modifier. So Toxic Barrage has the potential to be a ridiculously powerful cantrip. It's also important to know that there is a feat called Poisoner that allows you to ignore immunity to poison damage, which is also very, 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 very powerful. It's nuts. Toxic Barrage is really, really good. Okay, let's move on to the level 1 spells. Arms of Hadar. Upcasting this to level 2 or higher adds a series of modifiers to the damage at each upcast. The first time you upcast it, so level 2, you get Charisma. Level 3, you get Charisma plus Proficiency. Level 4, you get Charisma, Proficiency, and Intelligence. And level 5, you get Charisma, Proficiency, Intelligence, and Wisdom. So if you build a bunch of stats, Arms of Hadar becomes like pretty decent. I don't think it's noted here. It's not. You also get 2 turns of removing reactions, up from 1, so you can do an area of effect, remove reactions, and then get out of dodge. It's pretty nice. Will you use it? Probably not. Next up, Bane. It no longer requires concentration. Burning Hands. Upcasting this spell increases the damage by 2d6 because melee distance should be rewarded over a ranged and bigger area of effect, Fireball. So eventually, upcasting Burning Hands will actually deal more damage than a Fireball by, I think, 1 or 2d6 at most if you cast a level 6 of this. You're probably still going to cast a level 6 Fireball, but if you want to, you can get them Burning Hands. Color Spray costs a bonus action down from an action. That means you can blind enemies up to a certain amount of hit points with a bonus action, which is crazy, without a save. Will you use it? I have no idea. Cure Wounds, this is an interesting one. It can only be cast in combat, but it does not consume a spell slot when used. You cannot upcast it past level 3. Technically, you can upcast it past level 3, but it does not scale past level 3. And you can only use it once per turn. Technically, again, you can use 1 level of it per turn. So you can use level 3 and then a level 2 and then a level 1 if you wanted, or a level 6 and then 5 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 1 or whatever if you have 6 actions. You can do that with Cure Wounds. But it doesn't cost a spell slot, so healing strategies can revolve around Cure Wounds, and you can play like a pure pacifist, sanctuary yourself, and then just Cure Wounds for the rest of combat. That's totally viable, very fun. Divine Favor is the Radiant Hunter's Mark. It lasts until long rest and requires concentration. Hold on to your concentration and you get 1d4 additional radiant damage all day long. Ensnaring Strike. It lasts for 3 turns, down from 10, and it no longer requires concentration, which can be very annoying when enemies ensnare you. Entangle. It no longer requires concentration. Why does it require concentration if you can just burn it? That's crazy. Expeditious Retreat. This is probably the most goated change I've ever made. It lasts for 5 turns, down from long rest, but it no longer requires concentration. However, casting the spell initially is a free action that costs a spell slot. Subsequent dashes still cost a bonus action. This is one of my favorite changes. It's effectively a free action dash that costs a spell slot, and it is so unbelievably nice to have. It's very powerful, of course, especially if you're using it to kite enemies, which might be too powerful, but in many circumstances, it's just been very nice quality of life. You're 2 inches from a target from being able to hit it. Bam, Expeditious Retreat on your ranger. You're in distance, and now you slap. You know, it's really good. I would say it's pretty much as good as Misty Step because you can dash and then jump. Yeah, maybe that's too strong. I don't know, but it's so much fun that it's worth having. I think the key to making this more balanced would actually be to add it to enemies, not to make it worse, because it is so much fun. So much fun. Fairy Fire. The DC of this spell receives a +2 bonus at all times, so it is easier to land. Remember the Swarmkeeper that gets to do extra damage with Fairy Fire? It's easier to hit their Fairy Fire. Freaking awesome. If you have 16 Wisdom +2 spell save DC, you basically have 20 Wisdom. That's very nice. False Life. This is a very, very good change as well. When you cast it on yourself, you receive an increasing flat damage reduction every second upcast, starting with 1 at level 1. So at a level 1 spell slot, you get 1. At a level 2 spell slot, you get 1. At a level 3 spell slot, you get 3 flat reduction. At level 5, you get 3, and so on. Up to the 5th level, you will get a maximum of a 3 flat damage reduction because I've not made scaling past level 6 spells. Importantly, this isn't the only thing it does. It also adds in the temp HP, and the damage reduction only lasts as long as the temp HP last. So once the temp HP are gone, you lose the flat damage reduction. But if you stack a bunch of flat damage reduction, you can make those temp HP last all day long, which is really cool. Continuing on with level 1 spells, Good Berry. The berries spawned from this spell heal 3d4 per berry. That makes it a very, very viable way to heal yourself and not have to spam potions. Guiding Bolt. Upcasting this spell is very confusing, and I should change this, but you eventually scale the damage up to 4d12 at level 4. And at level 5 and 6, you scale up to 6d12 at a level 6 spell slot. Is that intuitive? Absolutely not. This is from old me. I should fix this. I should make it more intuitive. I just wanted it to deal a lot of damage because I really like Guiding Bolt, and I wanted to cast a level 6 one that did a crap load of damage. Okay? Sue me. 6d12 sounds like so much fun. Hail of Thorns. This spell now works with extra attack and does not have a saving throw. It's just an attack roll, and if you miss, the explosion still deals half damage. All damage is based on the attack roll. That's what I said. The player gets access to this from an item, and if enemies have access to Hail of Thorns, which I can't actually think of any that do, this would affect them, but normally you'll be casting Hail of Thorns as an instinct spell, unless you get it from the gloves that allow you to cast this. Heroism is the GOAT. It no longer requires concentration, and it adds the effect of Bless on top of those 5 temp HP. This is effectively the Heroism Potion as an action. It does cost an action. You can metagame it, of course, and cast it before combat, but casting it in combat is still pretty worth it. Upcasting it adds targets, so if you're all grouped up at the start of combat and you're all going first, you can cast a big upcasted Heroism, get everyone blessed, give them all 5 temp HP every turn, which is insane value. But of course you have to be stacked up, and that wizard with the extra initiative on the enemy team is probably going to fireball everybody. So good luck. Longstrider, the quality of life of all time. It affects all allies in an area, and it removes the visual effect. So you no longer have the little swirly bits around your feet, and you only have to cast it once per day. Protection from Evil and Good. This costs a spell slot and a bonus action to cast initially, but then you can recast it for a bonus action for the rest of the day. However, you are granted the buff for 5 turns on initial cast, and on recasts, you can cast it on allies as well. So you can grant yourself 5 turns of protection from evil and good for a bonus action, and you can also recast it on your allies. But again, it's going to take a lot of action economy to do that because it takes a bonus action to do it. The spell no longer requires concentration. Searing Smite no longer requires concentration and only lasts for 5 turns, down from 10. Shield of Faith works the same way that Protection from Evil and Good does. Cast it on yourself only initially, and then you can buff up your allies with it every turn for the rest of the day. You can also buff yourself with it. Thunderous Smite. This increases in damage at levels 5 and level 10 respectively. Upcasting it does not increase the damage. However, the damage does go up as the game progresses. So eventually this is going to become 2d10 damage at level 10, which is very nice. Wrathful Smite has the same treatment. It deals 2d6 and then 2d8 and then 2d10, which is awesome. And Shadowheart's Wrathful Smite is a unique variant, and it has its own scaling. It goes 1d6, 2d6, 3d6, but that's Shadowheart. Witch Bolt. This has gotten a big change. It is an attack roll spell that deals 3d6 lightning damage plus 1d6 per upcast, and it can be recast once within 5 turns without costing a spell slot. Notably, if you cast it from a scroll, you will not be able to recast it. So, wizards rejoice. You learn it and then you cast it. So this effectively means it is 2 actions for 66 lightning damage, or in the late game, it is 2 actions for, how many is it? 16d6? I don't know. That seems pretty decent. And you can double it with wet, and it's lightning damage, so it can be maximized. Lots of stuff can go on with Witch Bolt. It's a pretty good spell now. All right, we are on to the level 2 spells. Bark Skin. This has gotten a big change. You set your armor class to 14 plus your constitution modifier until long rest. Doesn't require concentration, and upcasting it grants 1 additional AC per spell level up to 18 AC at level 6. This makes it a competitor with the Armor of Agility and Armor of Persistence if you wear the Amulet from the House of Hope. Also, remove the visual effect so you no longer look like you have literal bark skin. The Elixir Bark Skin and the Bark Skin Armor both count as a level 4 cast of this, so you get 16 AC plus your Constitution modifier. Blur. Blur lasts for 3 turns at the cost of a bonus action and no longer requires concentration. The scroll has not been modified. It is an action for 3 turns, no bonus action. So the scroll kind of sucks. Oh well, I guess you'll just have to put the cloak on that gives it to you for free at pretty much all times. Branding Smite no longer requires concentration. Calm Emotions no longer requires concentration. Crown of Madness is a god tier spell. It costs a bonus action down from an action. This can get you killed if you make a mistake with how you use it, but it can also completely win battles. It is insane and so much fun to use. Dark Vision, the spell's unchanged. However, there are many more sources of Dark Vision available. Magic Initiate Warlock, Elixirs of Dark Vision, and Way of the Shadow Monk's Dark Vision and Third Eye Dark Vision all provide means of obtaining Dark Vision that can see through magical darkness. I hope you didn't take a shot every time I said Dark Vision. Detect Thoughts. It grants advantage on intelligence checks while active. Considering how risky it is to use Detect Thoughts, this is kind of fun, but it also provides a bonus inside combat sometimes if you have intelligence checks inside your kit. Enlarge Reduce. Costs a bonus action down from an action, so you can set up much easier for that 1d4 additional damage. Enthrall is now a ritual spell because it sucked before, and there's not really a good way to make it better. So, it's a ritual. Use it outside of combat, and, people will look at you. I don't know. Flame Blade. This lasts until long rest now. It should work with extra attack, and attacks with Flame Blade count as a weapon attack roll with your spellcasting modifier. This means it won't inherit stuff that affects spell attacks, but it will inherit things that affect weapon attacks. Flaming Sphere. You can summon it with a bonus action now. Magic Weapon is vanilla. It used to be more complicated. It's just vanilla. You cast it, it costs concentration, it lasts all day, it does its thing. It's vanilla. Some more level 2 spells. Melf's Acid Arrow got the Acid Splash treatment. It no longer requires a saving throw. It is guaranteed damage, baby. Upcasting increases damage by 2d4 per level, and it's now also available to sorcerers so that they can do things with their Acid Sorcerer, because I think they only had 1 spell, maybe? I don't know. Now they have a proper acid spell. Mirror Image. It lasts until long rest so that you don't have to just metagame it. You can just cast it in camp and then use it in whatever fight comes up. You just put it up after every combat and whatever. Moonbeam. I tried to mitigate some Sanctuary cheese. Casting the spell or the move variant afterward will remove the Sanctuary debuff, will remove the Sanctuary buff, but it's only a partial fix. Sanctuary doesn't end concentration on the spell, so you can still cast it and then Sanctuary yourself. And enemies walking into it won't remove your Sanctuary, but it's a little bit better. You at least have to cast it and leave it in one spot, and then enemies are probably just going to run out of it. Phantasmal Force. It applies the same effect as the level 3 Fear spell to a single target for 2 turns. So you make them run away, you make them drop their weapon. It also targets an intelligence save, but upcasting provides no benefit. So it is a single target Fear spell, which is insanely good. Another absolute game winner. Ray of Enfeeblement. It no longer requires concentration and also halves weapon damage from dexterity-based weapons, not only strength-based weapons. Have I ever used it still? No. Should I use it on Dror Ragzlin? Probably. That guy hits like a truck. Web no longer requires concentration. Alrighty, let's go on to the level 3 spells. Bestow Curse. It's a charisma save instead of a wisdom save, and it no longer requires concentration. Blink. It is a bonus action cost. It lasts 10 turns, and if you upcast it to level 5 or level 6, you turn it into a free action. It also dispels automatically when combat ends because I lost an honor run to Blink, crashing my game. Conjure Barrage. I don't think any enemies use this, but if they did, they would deal 3d8 plus their weapon damage, up from 2d8. And the spell is now an attack roll, making it usable with extra attack, but a miss still deals half damage. Crusader's Mantle is now very good. Allied weapon attacks now deal an additional 2d4 radiant damage, up from 1d4. Very nice. You'll probably use it from a cloak, not from your actual spell slots, but if you do use it from your spell slots, it's still kind of worth it if you have a very weapon-heavy party. Level 3 spells continued. Elemental Weapon no longer requires concentration, but it does have a once per long rest cooldown, so you can only cast it one time per day. Feign Death has been completely reworked into Invite Death. It applies the effects of Sanctuary to all allies except the caster in a massive radius for 3 turns. Has a once per combat cooldown. I have no idea if any enemies have Feign Death ready to go, but if they do, this spell's been flagged to be used by them. Could be fun. I've not seen it in any runs, so I don't think they do. But hey, Flare, if you're watching this, you should put this on an enemy. It would be so funny. Oh my gosh. I would absolutely die if I ran into an enemy with Feign Death. This would be so funny. Grant Flight. It now lasts all day at the cost of your concentration. Haste has been significantly nerfed. It no longer grants +2 armor class or advantage on dexterity saves. You receive a -2 penalty to all saving throws instead. You're so fast, you're a little bit reckless, you know? These changes affect the actual haste status effect and any spells or potions that cause the same effect. So the only one that's not affected is Celestial Haste because it comes from a legendary weapon, and I think it only lasts for 5 turns. I've made quite a few ways to manipulate or improve your party's action economy, and haste can take that power and just crank it up to 11. So this should dial back some of that power by making it a much, much larger risk to be hasted, even when gaining the effect from a potion. Lightning Arrow. We already went over this, but it's only an attack roll, making it usable with extra attack, and a miss still deals half damage. The Warden and Moonrise will wipe the floor with you if you're not careful thanks to this change. Double Lightning Arrow hits are a lot like getting double or triple smited, but in AoE. Protection from Energy. It no longer requires concentration. Will you use it? No. Vampiric Touch. It now lasts until long rest, but it still requires concentration. Will you use it? Still no, because it just doesn't deal that much damage. Let's go on to level 4 spells. Stone Skin. This lasts until long rest and no longer requires concentration like some other buff spells. Stone Skin also gives resistance to all physical damage, not just non-magical, and it provides 1 or 2 damage reduction from all but force and psychic damage when upcast to level 5 and level 6 respectively. It doesn't stack with Barkskin, and it can only be applied to 1 creature per caster. Scrolls of Stoneskin, I think, have also had their value increased to that of like a level 6 spell, so that they're harder to get. And I removed the visual effect so that you don't look like you have literal Stoneskin. This is basically the Armor of Persistence for a decent spell slot. The limit of 1 target per caster makes it slightly less overpowered unless you hoard scrolls or use 3 camp casters, which is always a possibility. Don't do it though, you're just ruining the game for yourself. Additionally, it is ridiculously strong. Because it's a pocket Armor of Persistence, you can also kind of combine it with the Adamantine Splint Mail. Now you have -4 damage taken, you're crit immune, you have resistance to all physical damage. You know, it's kind of crazy. Kind of crazy. Dimension Door. This is the big version of Misty Step, and it now costs a bonus action down from an action, so it is just the gigantic super long range version of Misty Step. Level 5 spells. Flame Strike, which used to deal just the same damage as a fireball, but in a smaller area and would get you killed by Radiant Retort, now deals 8d6 fire plus 5d6 radiant, which I think is some more. It deals more damage than a fireball. I know that much. Do I remember how much? No, I don't. It also gets 1 extra dice of each damage type when you upcast it, so a level 6 version deals 96 and 66, which is it's a lot of damage. Wall of Stone no longer requires concentration. I used this on stream the other day to block Balthazar from being able to fly away because he didn't have his flight ability from being on honor mode or whatever. Anyway, it was really funny. That's the only time I've used it, but it's a neat idea to be able to control the battlefield with a Wall of Stone, block off some enemies that you don't want to be able to get out, and then, you take out the other ones. You can isolate and conquer. Kind of cool. No longer requires concentration. Artistry of War. All classes but wizards are now limited to 3 missiles per cast. That's mostly important for warlocks, as we went over earlier, but it also affects everyone who just wants to use the scroll to cheese the last fight. Level 6 spells, Circle of Death. It just deals 48 necrotic damage on a failed save. And it deals 8d6 necrotic damage on a successful save. So if they fail the save, you deal maximum damage. If they pass the save, you deal a fireball. That seems pretty decent. Are you going to use it for your 1 level 6 spell slot a day? Probably not. Are you going to want Circle of Death scrolls? Probably. I don't know. Have fun. Flesh to Stone. You're still not going to use this spell probably, but this spell automatically receives a +4 bonus to its spell save DC. Stage 1 of the effect is unchanged. Stage 2, the target loses their bonus action. And Stage 3, the target loses their bonus action and has disadvantage on con saves, so they're really likely to fail it. If you last 3 turns, I think Flesh to Stone could just kill Raphael. That's kind of cool, especially with that +4 bonus to DC. I don't know if Legendary Resistance makes them, resist this, but it's a neat idea. Maybe I should play a wizard and try it out. Blade Barrier. I bug fixed this one. The DC for the initial and the recurring ticks are now your spellcaster DC. Okay, that's all the spell changes. Let's move on to the rebalanced feats. These are pretty intense, so let's go over them. Actor, no changes. Very intense, right? Alert, +1 initiative, down from +5, and it grants an additional reaction point with no other changes. The Elixir of Vigilance has been nerfed to +3 in this mod. This is to make the initiative changes more valuable, but also to make the Elixir of Vigilance still a valuable thing to take. +5 is still really strong in a +8 system, so +3, you're still probably going to go first, but you're not as guaranteed. Enemies are not affected by this change, though. If they have the vanilla alert, I've actually ensured that they keep the vanilla alert to preserve the initiative bonus they were designed to have. They will not have the additional reaction point. So if they're supposed to go first, they're probably still going to go first. And alert is not going to make you go first. It's going to make you a little faster, but it's going to make you react way better. So if you want to build a riposte build with like Lae'zel or with a ranger, you can do that thanks to the alert feat. Athlete. This gives you a +1 to strength and a +1 to dexterity with no other changes. So you're getting basically a split ASI and the ability to jump real far and stand up for half movement. Pretty nice. Charger Shove now only costs a bonus action, and you gain +1 to strength or dexterity. Crossbow Expert has been changed into Archery Expert. All ranged weapon attacks, except for thrown, so, bows and crossbows and hand crossbows, have a chance to apply gaping wounds to the target, which increases the amount of damage they take by 2, right? All ranged attacks from bows or crossbows can be used in melee distance with the same rules as Crossbow Expert, and you gain +1 to dexterity. Defensive Duelist. This gives you +1 to dexterity, and when attacked while wielding a finesse weapon, you can add your proficiency bonus to your armor class for the rest of your turn for the cost of a reaction. The attack doesn't need to be melee, and the armor class bonus persists until the start of your next turn, just like the shield spell. That's very good. It's basically a resource-free shield spell, but it's less potent than shield, and it's only close to as potent as shield in the late game. In the early game, it's only +2, so it's not always that good. You also have to trigger the reaction in order for you to get that +2. So if they're 3 above your armor class, you won't trigger the reaction. So they have to be within that 2 range, or 3, depending on your proficiency bonus and so on, right? So it's a little clunkier than shield, but that kind of helps balance it out. It is very good though. Dual wielder, you gain +1 to any ability score. No other changes. Dungeon Delver has been completely reworked. You get proficiency and advantage for all perception checks. You can cast Knock, the spell that unlocks stuff, at will, basically as a ritual spell, and you gain basic training in Wisdom, which sets your Wisdom to 13 unless it would otherwise be higher. Durable, you gain +2 to your Constitution, up from +1, and you gain shield proficiency. So you can heal all the way up on short rests, you gain extra HP, guaranteed, and you can use a shield if you want. Pretty decent on a caster that, I don't know, wants it. Elemental Adept. You gain +1 to any spell casting stat without any other changes. Great Weapon Master has had a rework. Instead of a -5 penalty for +10 damage, you now have -2. You now have a -2 penalty, scaling to -4, so you effectively lose your proficiency bonus. And the damage now scales from 1d4 to 2d4 to 3d4 alongside cantrip levels at levels 1, 5, and 10, respectively. This change leaves the overall power of Great Weapon Master pretty much in the same place, but it spreads the boost out significantly more. 10 damage at level 2 in this mod, or level 4 in vanilla because of when you unlock feats and everything, is just too high. However, changing to damage dice also has great synergy with critical hits and with Savage Attacker, and with the great weapon fighting style. So it's nice that you can build synergy and it's not just adding a crap load of flat damage. The end result is very similar overall power to the vanilla feat, but it takes a little while to get there. You're not just instantly, if I hit, I kill it. If I don't hit, I don't hit, you know? Heavily armored. You gain +1 to any ability score, you gain +1 armor class, and no other changes. That +1 AC is crazy. Heavily armored is now kind of worth it. Heavy Armor Master. This is another one of the broken feats that I've made, especially if you're a solo player. Decrease all damage taken by 2, up from only non-magical physical damage. So you just reduce your damage taken by 2. I should probably reduce this to 1, but for now, it's 2. +1 to Constitution and +1 to Strength. So you get a split ASI, and you reduce your damage taken, and you reduce your damage taken by 2. You could go heavily armored at level 2 if you already had medium armor proficiency, heavy armor master at level 4, and now you are a tanky god. It's insane. Lightly armored, +1 to Constitution and to Dexterity, so another split ASI, +1 armor class, no other changes. So it's a little more limited than heavily armored, which gets any ability score, but you, I don't know. Maybe that's just worse. Maybe that's just worse. Oh well, lucky, no changes. I don't know how to change this one. I have ideas. I never use this. I want to use it. I really like the look of the luck points, but I just never use it, and so I haven't changed it. And, you know, I don't know. Mage Slayer. You add your proficiency bonus to saving throws against any spells, regardless of distance. I just had an idea for how to change lucky. What if I gave you 3 luck points? 3 luck points, but you can only use them once per game. No matter what. You get 3 luck points once per game, and when you use your luck point, you spend the whole day with advantage on everything. That's a little broken. It's a little broken. I kind of like the idea, but it's a little broken. Mage Slayer. Add your proficiency bonus to saving throws against any spells, regardless of the distance. No other changes. This actually makes Mage Slayer kind of goated. It's so good. You're so good at resisting enemy spells, and if you're in melee distance, you can just smack them. And if you're dual wielding, you could smack them twice. It's amazing. Martial Adept. You gain 2 Battlemaster die instead of 1, which is very nice, and it grants proficiency with martial weapons. So if you want to be a martial weapon wielding monk, you can take Martial Adept, and you get 2 additional short rest resources to do stuff with every fight, which is kind of cool. Medium Armor Master. The maximum armor bonus from dexterity while wearing medium armor is now +4, up from +3, and you gain +1 to strength or dexterity. I just took this in my current run, and it's actually doing really well. Like, really well. I'm enjoying it. Mobile. Increase your strength or dexterity by +1. Moderately armored. This unlocks your medium armor as an option, and it's +1 to any ability score, +1 armor class, and no other changes. Lightly armored gives you 2 scores, which is really nice, dexterity and constitution. So maybe it's not just worse than heavily armored and moderately armored, but maybe I should just make it +1 to any score. I don't know. Maybe this is better. Like, if you're taking lightly armored, you're really trying to get tankier, so con and dexterity at the same time is kind of nice. I don't know. Let's keep going. Magic initiates all. All of the spells and cantrips learned through these feats are now cast with your spellcasting modifier, so you don't have to, like, be mad just because you took a feat. Each of these feats, including the 2 new Magic Initiate feats, which we'll go over in a little bit, grant basic training in their respective spellcasting stats, so either Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma. Basic training sets that ability to 13 if it wasn't higher already. Magic Initiate Bard, you gain musical instrument proficiency. You learn a level 1 Bard spell that can be cast once per short rest. All of the spells learned from these are once per short rest instead of long rest, so I'm just not going to repeat that. Bard spell, short rest. Magic Initiate Cleric, you gain +1 to attack rolls and +1 to saving throws as a permanent blessing. Lost on respec, of course. And short rest cleric spells. Magic Initiate Druid, you gain the ability to wild shape into a cat at will. And you get spells per short rest. Magic Initiate Sorcerer, you learn 2 sorcerer cantrips, and you gain 2 sorcery points and learn 1 meta magic, picked from extended spell or twinned spell. You do not learn any level 1 spells as a Magic Initiate Sorcerer. This is a cantrip feat. Magic Initiate Warlock, another cantrip feat. You make a minor deal with a minor being. You learn 2 Warlock cantrips, notably not Eldritch Blast, and 1 Warlock invocation, notably Agonizing Blast or Repelling Blast. You can take Magic Initiate Warlock with Booming Blade and Repelling Blast, and boom, your Booming Blade is now full power. You can knock enemies back, so they have to run away or run up to you, and they'll take the extra damage. It's kind of awesome. You don't learn any Warlock spells. Magic Initiate Wizard. You learn 2 spells from the Wizard spell list that can be cast once per short rest each. So you gain the 2 cantrips, and you gain 2 spells, which is kind of cool and kind of nerdy, right? Performer. Musical instrument proficiency, and you gain expertise in performance. This is very, 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 very good on the Drunk Monk because their Cheeky Tipple check is a performance check. So you can add twice your proficiency bonus and you will be basically swimming in key points. Polearm Master. The bonus action attack from this feat now deals 1/2 of your basic damage. So dice plus your modifier, and all of your weapon attack riders and tridents are now included. This is different than the vanilla fix to this, so it's slightly different. I think it still functions well, though. Resilient was already good, so no changes. Ritual Caster. You now learn 3 ritual spells up from 2. You gain basic training in 2 abilities of your choosing, which means those are set to 13 as a minimum. Of course, if you want to go higher than 13, you still need to have a natural 13 or 14 or whatever, but still very good if you just want to have high minimum scores. Savage Attacker, no changes. Sentinel, no changes. Very good. Sharpshooter has been completely reworked. You learn 2 new abilities. One is called Improved Brace, which allows you to re-roll ranged damage die and use the higher result for 3 turns per use. This ability costs 5 meters of movement speed, down from 6 meters, and has no short rest cooldown, so you can brace once every 3 turns, right? You also learn an ability called Sharp Shot, which is a ranged attack action that costs 9 meters of movement speed to use and can be used once per turn and cannot be used while dash is active. You also gain +1 to dexterity. So instead of dealing additional damage, Sharpshooter gives you ways to spend movement speed to improve your damage. You can either re-roll it or you can add a whole extra attack that doesn't cost an actual action or bonus action. It only costs your movement speed. If you're a short race, it costs your 7 meters of movement speed instead of 9, and it'll unlock the correct one depending on which race you are. Importantly, this extra attack is not a full powered attack until level 5. It deals half damage until level 5 because otherwise it's just extra attack and is really, really strong before that. Shield Master. I fixed a vanilla bug. I don't know which one, but I did. While you have at least one reaction point available, you reduce all incoming physical damage types by 1d4. There's a lot of damage reduction that I've made. Again, very strong. You can get very, very, very tanky very, very, very quickly with feats. Skilled. Oh, wait. Let's go back. Remember, this is when you have one reaction point available, not when you spend a reaction point. Have the reaction point available, you take 1d4 less damage. If you don't have a reaction point available, you don't reduce the incoming damage. But of course, you spent your reaction probably on something more useful. So, skilled. You gain proficiency in 2 skills of your choice, down from 3, but you gain adept training in 1 ability of your choice, which sets that ability score to a minimum of 15. Which means you gain a +2 in that ability score. If you do this with intelligence, you can dump intelligence, and then you gain +2 bonus to intelligence, and now you've gained an effective +3 to your initiative. Spell Sniper. This is a very fun one. It increases the range of your spells by a quarter. You also increase the range of melee spells by a few meters, and you gain +1 to a spellcasting stat. This is all included with the -1 to your crit threshold, right? I've also added all weapon cantrips to the spell list, and weapon spells also benefit from the increased crit range. The big thing here is you can attack from like 4 meters away, I think, or 3 or 4 meters away, which is farther than halberd range, and you can like blue flame blade or lightning strike or thunderous smite. I don't know. You can do a lot of stuff. It's very, very cool to have ranged melee attacks. Tavern Brawler has been also reworked. You add half of your strength modifier to attack rolls of thrown, unarmed, and improvised weapon attacks, down from your full strength modifier. So in the vanilla game, you have your regular strength modifier, and then you have your Tavern Brawler strength modifier that gets added on top. You will keep your regular vanilla strength modifier, and you will lose half of that top end, right? So if you have 20 strength, that's +5 normally. Vanilla Tavern Brawler, that's a +10 to your attack rolls. In Chocolate Edition, it is a +8 to your attack rolls. Which is, by the way, still busted strong for thrown weapons because they can inherit their own +1, +2, +3 bonuses. So you can still get really, really high bonuses. Also, the increased damage for these attack types now scales in dice instead of from your strength modifier. So it's half your strength modifier to accuracy, and then the damage goes 1d4, 1d6, and 1d8, scaling at cantrip levels of 1, 5, and 10, respectively. The Tough Feat has gotten a juiced upgrade. You get 1 flat damage reduction, which everybody seems to really enjoy. People already liked Tough. I thought Tough was kind of lame, so I added a little juice. I hope you enjoy the juice. Warcaster, finally, you gain +1 to any spellcasting ability and no other changes. It's been requested that I add more reaction spells. That makes sense. Booming Blade as a reaction would be very cool with Warcaster. So, I don't know. Join the Discord, drop some Warcaster suggestions, and maybe I'll make a couple reaction spells. Finally, Weapon Master. This no longer grants +1 to strength or dexterity, and you only gain proficiency with 1 weapon type of your choice. But you double your proficiency bonus to attack rolls with that weapon type. You receive a -10 penalty to attack rolls with all other weapon types. So, if you take Trident Expert, you now have up to a +4 additional bonus to your accuracy with tridents. This kind of creates some of the issue that Tavern Brawler had where it was too accurate, but you can only use that weapon type. It also doesn't apply to your thrown attacks with those weapons. It is to your melee attacks or your ranged attacks with it. Is it too good? I don't know. Probably. It was really, really good on my last run where I used a paladin with this. They had 16 strength, like 14 dexterity, and their accuracy with a longbow was still like freaking sick. Like it was really good. So maybe it's too strong, but it's really fun. It's a lot of fun to add +4 and to just use like the dead shot, but for whatever weapon you want to choose. And you have to sacrifice a feat for it. I don't know. It's good. Now, those are all the vanilla feats, but there are new feats too, like Fighting Initiate. You gain +1 to strength or dexterity, and you learn a fighting style of your choice from the fighter fighting style list, which is all of the fighting styles. The Light Armor Master feat grants you +1 to your armor class, attack rolls, and spell save DC and initiative. This is a juiced feat. If you want to use light armor for the drip, you know, because the light armors are drippy, this is just a go-to feat. It's so good. +1 AC, +1 attack rolls, +1 spell save DC, +1 initiative. So good. So many stats all stacked into one feat. Deadly Alacrity. You reduce the number needed to roll a critical hit by 1, and you increase any ability score by +1. But you can only take it one time. Flight. This is like the funniest feat. It grants an ability to fly at will, and you gain +1 to any spell casting ability score. So this is kind of a spellcaster version of the Athlete feat. Athlete gives you +1 strength and dexterity, and lets you yeet yourself across the battlefield super efficiently. Flight lets a spellcaster fly. Can a non-spellcaster take this? Of course, but you're going to sacrifice most of the value of that ASI in the process. Insightful. You gain +1 wisdom or intelligence, and you gain expertise in insight and investigation. This is like a conversation feat for intelligence and wisdom-based characters instead of like actor and performance and performer or whatever, right? Zealot. This is a very cool feat. You pick a god that you worship, and you gain a +1 channel divinity, and you gain 1 additional channel divinity charge, and you learn a unique to this feat channel divinity called Zealous Wrath, which allows you to maximize any damage roll at the cost of a channel divinity charge and a bonus action. The feat does have a quirk. It adds the tags for your deity of choice, including a cleric tag, regardless of your class choice. This is just required so that you can get the deity option to show up in your dialogue options. But the ability to maximize damage at the cost of a bonus action is just so fun. It only works once per short rest, unless you're a cleric, in which case you can do it a lot. But, you know, very fun. Zealot. Devious. I've not found a reason to use this yet, but I really want to. You gain +1 to dexterity, intelligence, or charisma, and you gain proficiency in stealth and sleight of hand, and you learn cunning action hide. This is rogue in a feat, right? Cunning action hide plus dexterity, intelligence, or charisma. So you can do kind of a range of different builds. You can be sneaky without being a rogue. You can be like a sneaky spellcaster if you want without having to go arcane trickster. So you can be like a sneaky shadow sorcerer or whatever. There's lots of good options here. I just haven't actually used it yet, but I really want to. I want to play a devious character. Is this finally? No, there's so many more. The next one is Power Nap. This was kind of bad before. It just regenerated spell slots, but now it's the GOAT. It functions as a once per day potion of angelic reprieve, granting you a short rest and restoring all level 1 and level 2 spell slots. It's literally identical to the potion of angelic reprieve. It is so good. This is going to let paladins just last all day if they want. They might lose out on like their channel oath smites, but they can use this to go thunderous smite literally everything. Rangers are going to have so much power with this. Wizards in the early game, so much power. Druids, everybody. Anybody who has level 1 and 2 spell slots is going to do really well. This is also going to be good on Arcane Tricksters if you want to go the Arcane Blast setup. Right? You use Arcane Blast to spend your Chromatic Orbs to get your sneak attacks on this really cool spell. And then you Power Nap and you get all your spell slots back and you're ready to go for another couple fights. Very, very cool. Spoiler, there's also a way to get this feature through an item. Magic Initiate Paladin. You gain a level 1 Paladin spell usable once per short rest. gain basic training and charisma, setting it to a minimum of 13, and you gain 4 lay on hands charges and the ability to use them for their healing abilities. And this version of lay on hands scales with your character level, not your class level, so you can do a bunch of healing. Magic Initiate Ranger is another one that is probably way too strong. You gain 1 level 1 Ranger spell, usable once per short rest. You gain basic training and wisdom, setting it to a minimum of 13, which is really good for your saving throws. And you gain +1 to attack rolls with your weapons, and you take 1 less damage. That is probably what's too strong. I think the rest of this could stay, but that might need to go. But for now, use it, have some fun. It's a very fun feat. Next up is the Reckless feat. Gain an additional bonus action at the cost of a -3 penalty to all saving throws. You want to be a crazy monk right out of the rip? Reckless. Yeah, Reckless. This is just so good. This fills the role of fast hands for all those builds that wanted that extra bonus action. Focused Caster. With a free hand, you are a more potent spellcaster. While you're wielding only one weapon that is one-handed, versatile, a shortbow, or a longbow, gain a +1 bonus to your armor class, spell attacks, and spell save DC. Poisoner. +1 to your intelligence. And your poison damage ignores resistance and immunity to poison damage. You can summon poison in your hand and dip your weapon into that poison, adding 1d4 to your weapon attacks. Your hand cannot be both poisoned and burning with Produce Flame. This is also probably too strong that it ignores immunity to poison damage. Like, you can just stand above Grim without him even being in lava and just shoot him with Toxic Barrage all day, and he'll just die. Right? You can ignore immunity to poison damage, even if they like really should be immune to poison damage. But in most cases, it's just really fun that you can like finally use poison damage in Act 2. That's just fun. Fighting Finesse. This is a crazy feat. Oh my gosh. With Fighting Finesse, reduce the number needed to roll a critical hit by 1. And you increase your weapon damage with critical hits by 1 dice. I believe this only applies to finesse weapons, but these effects can stack. So you can go Fighting Finesse on a barbarian, on a half-orc, and when you crit, your scimitar is going to do 4d6 damage. That's insane. And you're going to be critting so often because you can reduce crit here. You can reduce crit by going champion fighter. You can reduce your crit by being lots of things, right? You can crit on like a 10 and you get extra dice. Absolutely insanely good. Offhanded. You gain +1 to any ability score, and you add your ability modifier to your offhand damage. At level 5 and beyond, when you use an offhand melee attack, you can make a second offhand melee attack as a free action. In return, extra attack is disabled. The final new feat is Dueler's Choice. You choose your weapon with a pseudo sort of weapon bind, and with your chosen dueling weapon equipped without a shield, you deal an additional 1d4 damage, you gain +1 armor class, and you cannot be disarmed. That's all the new feats right now. There's so many good feats. It's really ridiculously hard to choose what you want to take, unless you have a very clear vision for your build. But if you kind of like me and you fly by the seat of your pants, feat selection takes like 10 minutes. There's so many good options. All right, let's move on to the miscellaneous changes. Now, these changes are somewhat miscellaneous. There's going to include like fighting styles and some items and some like condition nerfs and buffs. These are mostly from versions 3 and before. There's a whole section that's going to be on the new version 4 items that we'll get to soon. So first things first, enemy health has been increased on Tactician and Honor Mode difficulties. Enemies are going to have 50% increased health, up from 30% increased health. This is 50% more than the like standard normal difficulty health, not 50% more than normal Honor Mode. It's actually only like 11 or 12% more than normal Honor Mode. So the normal Honor Mode gets 30%, and Chocolate Edition Honor Mode and Tactician gets 50% instead. Some fighting style changes. These are pretty dramatic. 2-weapon fighting. If you have a bonus action available, you can attack a single target with your main and offhand weapons at the same time without consuming that bonus action. This works with dual-wieldable weapon cantrips as well. So using your offhand attack on its own, though, feels clumsy, dealing 3 less damage and receiving a -4 penalty to attack rolls. This is to allow for offhanded as a feat, which we talked about earlier, where you can get your modifier added to your offhand, and you can make extra attacks with your offhand, but you lose extra attack. This works with extra attack. So as long as you don't consume your bonus action, you get the cool double strike animation with dual wielding, which is really fun. It's really strong. The difference is you don't get your offhand modifier, so your 2 scimitars essentially becomes a 2d6 plus your dexterity modifier weapon, right? That's the same as a greatsword, and it costs the same action economy to use as well, unless you spend that bonus action. The reason you have to have the bonus action available is because the game actually requires you to have a bonus action in order to toggle on the dual wielding feature. If you don't have that toggled on, it just doesn't work, which is unfortunate. It's a limitation, but this is noted in the game that if you have a bonus action available, you can do this. So if you jump first, or you like use an offhand attack first, or whatever, it won't work. It should be noted, if you have extra sources of bonus actions, you only need 1 bonus action. So you can still have like the Reckless feat and spend 1 bonus action, and then you still have 1 available to get your extra attack dual wield fighting or whatever. Very fun. There's also a new fighting style available. This is light weapon fighting style. These weapons get +1 to attack and +1 to damage rolls, and this is available to swords and valor bards, fighters, rangers, and through the fighting initiate feat. This is somewhere in between the archery fighting style and the dueling fighting style, but for light weapons in particular. The defense fighting style, as I've noted elsewhere, has been made unavailable to players. The +1 AC has been integrated into martial prowess instead. Some truly miscellaneous changes that I've said. Radiating Orb has been nerfed. The maximum stacks are reduced to 5. It's still a -5 to hit, which is really good. It might actually be -4 to hit, because I think one turn of it wears off at the beginning of the enemy's turn. But that's still really good. -10 or -7 was just like way too strong. Arcane Acuity has had the same nerf. The maximum stacks are reduced to 5. +5 to spell save DC is also just absurdly good. +10 was just too much. Way too much. The Tenacity weapon passive. This is the one that lets you use your reaction to hit with certain bludgeoning weapons, even when you miss. This now applies weapon functors like Smite and Damage Riders, and it no longer has a flat damage value based on your strength. The damage formula is now your main melee weapon's damage dice divided by 3. This is really strong. It's super good. Super good. The main reason I did it is because Smite, the Channel Oath Smite, would trigger on Tenacity even though you weren't hitting it. So it was super weird. You would like try and hit, you would miss, and you would spend the Channel Oath charge, but you wouldn't get the smite damage. Now, because of the way the conditions worked, that shouldn't have been possible, but it was. That's what was happening, and so I just had to change Tenacity and make it stronger. So it's supposed to be divided by 3, and it is, but you still get all your damage riders, so it can still be really, really strong. There's also been a bug fix. Tenacity can no longer trigger on offhand attacks. Now, before we get into the big item changes, there have been some vanilla equipment changes from before. So the Blood Guzzler Garb got the tooltip fixed. It is now correct. Linebreaker Boots, I fixed the tooltip. The Cap of Wrath, I'm pretty sure I fixed the tooltip. And the Enraging Heart Garb actually works now. So you generate 2 turns of Wrath each turn. Because Wrath decreases by 1 turn automatically, you effectively gain 1 stack per turn. This is really good. Yep. All of the Wrath items now are like legitimately good. Blood Guzzler and Enraging Heart Garb are 2 of my favorite barbarian items in the entire game, and they work insanely well with dual wielding barbarians. Elven Chain now works with unarmored defense variants and mage armor, so it counts as the clothing armor type, and it has no limit on adding dexterity to your armor class. Effectively, this is clothing that adds +3 armor class, +2 initiative, and advantage on dex saves. It's really, really good. The Adamantine gear has also received some buffs. The Adamantine Scimitar has a new spell called Adamantine Speed, which is like the Duelist Prerogative. When you're not dual wielding, you can make an additional attack at the cost of a bonus action. The Adamantine Longsword just gets greatsword damage when you dual wield it. It's 2d6 while wielding with both hands. And if you have it in one hand, it's 1d10, which makes it a very, very good monk weapon. The adamantine mace deals 1d10 damage while wielded in one hand. Can't wield it in two, of course. And it has the Heartstopper weapon ability, which is a stun, and the tenacity weapon ability. So it's somewhere in between a Morningstar and a mace, and it deals a lot of damage as a 1d10 main hand. So these are all like kind of worth using now. I don't know if they're better than the armors, but they're still pretty good. The Sword of Justice, Tears Protection, I removed the cooldown and it doesn't require concentration. It applies Shield of Faith for 5 turns at the cost of a bonus action. The Daredevil Gloves and Will's class, the Daredevil Proximity passive has removed the check for an enemy threatening you, so it's now just a toggleable passive. You just turn it on and it makes a ranged spell into a melee spell, and it has no more random and buggy condition spam, which sometimes happened and was really annoying. The Moonlight Glaive, the weapon's damage type is now all radiant instead of slashing, which makes it pretty neat. Keeping it going, these are still version 3 changes. Staff of Crones, this is the staff that has like poison spray, poison Ray of Sickness on it. Yeah, it's got Ray of Sickness on it. You get it from Auntie Ethel. It's now a +1 staff, and it has a 1d4 poison damage rider on it. The Arcane Synergy items have been reworked and renamed to Synergetic Strikes. So the diadem of Arcane Synergy, this has Synergetic Strikes Wisdom, and it now adds 1d4 plus your Wisdom modifier to weapon attacks that are also spells. So that includes your weapon cantrips, that includes your spell smites, that includes like Hail of Thorns and Ensnaring Strike, and a few other things. This item has also been moved. It is no longer at the Creche. Instead, you get it from Bernard in the Underdark instead of the Creche, so that the cantrip boosting effects are more spread out. In version 3, all of your best cantrip boosting items are in the Creche. You have the Diadem of Arcane Synergy, you have the Ring of Arcane Synergy, and you had the Necklace of Elemental Augmentation. So you would go to the Creche and your power level would spike so hard. So now it's been spread out a little bit more. There is an item that has replaced the Diadem of Arcane Synergy in the Creche that we'll go over later. The Ring of Arcane Synergy is now Synergetic Strikes Intelligence, and it does the same thing as this, but it adds 1d4 plus your Intelligence modifier to weapon attacks that are also spells. So if you use the Diadem of Arcane Synergy and the Ring of Arcane Synergy, you're going to get 2d4 plus your Wisdom plus your Intelligence modifier added to attacks that are also spells. That makes these a very potent combination. But these changes were made because there are already 5 additional ways beyond Arcane Synergy to add your Charisma modifier specifically to weapon attacks of various kinds. So this balances that out a bit and encourages many martial characters to build into more attributes to make the best use of these items. This also adds a little bit more juice to Eldritch Knight and Arcane Trickster and Bladesinger and Ranger compared to Paladins, Warlocks, and Hexblade Bards specifically. The Blast Pendant, it has a reworked Lightning Blast spell. You explosively tap into the electricity around you, generating 5 lightning charges for yourself and anyone in the area. It still has a short rest cooldown. And if you're not careful, you will give lightning charges to the enemy as well. It also has a new passive, which is called Overcharged. While in combat, you generate 1 lightning charge every turn, which makes it very worth using. The Spellmite Gloves, these spells that are weapon attacks now properly take their -5 penalty to their attack rolls, so that you can't just get all of the benefit of the extra 1d8 on top of a weapon cantrip. The Poisoner's Ring, we talked about this before. When you deal poison damage, deal an additional 1 poison damage. The Ring of Flinging works with Trick Knife, which is it was a version 3 change. It didn't work before, but now it does. Heat has been reworked and made usable and maybe overpowered. I'm finally getting around to doing a run with Heat, and oh my gosh, is it so strong. So Heat heats you up, causing you to take 1d4 fire damage per turn, but also reducing the fire damage you take by 1 per turn of heat. You can spend turns of heat with heat convergence for 1d6 plus your heat duration extra fire damage the next time that you deal fire damage. It is very powerful now, especially with what we're going to go over later, the Cracked Soul Coin Pocket Charm, and we're going to see Pocket Charms for more details. Heat is very powerful now. You can spend it super often. It doesn't cost a resource to spend, and on stuff like Blue Flame Blade, it adds the extra heat damage to both the damage you deal to your primary target and the damage you deal to the secondary target. So you end up with 2d6 plus your heat duration. It's actually like insanely strong. And then if you have like an extra fire rider on your weapon, it also kind of adds stuff there. It's a bit much. It might be too good. But hey, that's kind of cool. Ring of Self-Immolation. I skipped Fireheart Amulet. The Fireheart Amulet now provides heat whenever you take fire damage at all, regardless of the source. That might mean if you take damage from heat, but obviously you take less damage from heat the more turns you have, so eventually you take no fire damage from heat, so it won't work all the time. The Ring of Self-Immolation, set yourself on fire, taking 1d8 fire damage and gaining 4 turns of heat. Has a short rest cooldown, so this just lets you pump it up real quick and then, let it go. Tridents, they have added change where their one-handed damage is now 1d8 instead of 1d6, and their two-handed damage is 1d10, up from 1d8. This is to better differentiate them from spears and quarterstaves. They are a martial weapon after all, so they should deal a little bit more damage than these two simple weapons. Okay, now we are in officially to the version 4 miscellaneous changes. Just like heat got a buff, noxious fumes got a huge buff. It no longer requires a saving throw to be affected by it from the Icarus Gloves or Kareska's favor. It applies to dead bodies so that the aura of damage remains and enemies that pass through it will still take damage. It's no longer limited to once per turn or once per attack or ability to apply turns of it, and it can also be applied to multiple enemies with a single ability like Acid Splash or the Arrow of Many Targets with the Caustic Band. Targets who have the Noxious Fume status on them also receive a -1 penalty to their armor class, but targets in the aura don't take that penalty. The Flesh Melter Cloak's acid damage also applies Noxious Fumes if you have the Icarus Gloves equipped, so the actual acid set works much better together. And turns of Noxious Fumes are additive and can be extended indefinitely by dealing more acid damage. The acid damage from Noxious Fumes itself does not add to the duration of the status, though. As far as I know, enemies can take maybe 2 instances of Noxious Fumes damage per turn, 1 instance from their own Noxious Fumes, and 1 from a separate body or body having the aura. Maybe they can take 3 turns, but I've only seen 2, but I didn't test it super extensively. This makes acid very, very good. Back to version 3 and before changes, Fierce Perilous Stakes has been nerfed. It no longer stacks with itself. You can only have 1 instance of it active on a character at a time. You still deal a bunch of extra damage with it, but you can no longer just deal 400 psychic damage with Magic Missile or Artistry of War, Ray of Fire, Slayer Arrows, or Arrows of Many Targets or whatever, right? You are much more limited in your ability to blow up the entire end encounters with this ability. Elixirs of Strength have been nerfed and also buffed. They've been readjusted. The Elixir of Hill Giant Strength increases your strength by 4 up to a maximum of 30. And the Elixir of Cloud Giant Strength increases your strength by 7 to a maximum of 30. So if you build 20 strength, you can now get 24 out of your Elixir of Hill Giant Strength or 27 out of your Elixir of Cloud Giant Strength. But if you only build 8, you're going to go to 12 with your Hill Giant Strength and 15 with your Cloud Giant Strength. This means it is valuable to build at least 16 points of strength, at least. But you get rewarded for building more. The Elixirs of Hill Giant and Cloud Giant Strength were just too strong, being able to set your stat so high and available so early. You just never needed to build strength. Everyone should have just dumped it and taken an elixir. This means strength is actually valuable. The Resonance Stone no longer grants advantage on physical checks. It increases movement speed by 1.5 times within its aura, and it reduces initiative by 5 because you're just so distracted by your own happiness. If you want to abuse the Resonance Stone, you absolutely can, but it's very risky to do so. You are probably not going to go first if you are in the aura, and if you have your whole party in the aura, oh boy, you guys are going to get dumpstered. Okay, we are finally to version 4 equipment changes. Version 4 is bringing a ton of equipment changes and new pieces of equipment, so let's go over the details. First up, all ringmail armors now grant up to +4 armor class based on your constitution. Their base armor class has been reduced by 1 across the board, so you get effectively 3 higher if you have 18 constitution. This makes them kind of earlier game equivalents of plate armors if you have enough con to make it work. This is a neat change. Ringmail armor was just like kind of really crappy heavy armor, and now it's kind of decent and incentivizes building a little bit differently. Now onto the specific items. The Ring of Jumping now comes with permanent Enhanced Leap while equipped. It does not stack with other sources of Enhanced Leap. So no longer do you have the bonus action cast of Enhanced Leap. You just have Enhanced Leap while you have this ring on, which gives you a ton of mobility. It does in some ways compete with the Amulet of Misty Step or the Misty Step boots, but it's kind of another option. If you have enough strength, this can be a very good option. Or if you have no strength, it's still a pretty decent option. The Moonlight Glaive has received another buff here. The Moonmote weapon spell has the cooldown reduced to once per battle, improved from once per long rest, so you can kind of always use it. It requires concentration and I think an action to set up, so it's kind of still a high action economy spell, but you can now use it every combat, which is pretty neat. There is a new item. I couldn't modify the vanilla item for reasons, but this is the Dirty Poo Scraper. I'm not going to tell you where it's found, but it's a +1 Rusty Dagger. It deals an additional 1d4 acid damage. Next up, there is the Light Crossbow of Speed. This is available later in the game, and it is actually a vanilla item, a cut content item that's made accessible in Act 3 somewhere. The Sickle of Bual is now a +1 sickle, and Lacerate from this weapon has no cooldown. Lorethrian's Wrath has not received a buff or a change at all. Instead, it's just had the model swapped to a katana to better differentiate it from Falar Aluve. The Sword of Screams also now has a +1 enchantment. The Deep Delver is now a +1 war pick, and the Shattered debuff keeps its vanilla functionality, but it also reduces movement speed of those affected by it. The hand axe that you get early on, called Dragon's Grasp, has a new passive called Flint and Steel. When attacking a target with metal armor or a metal construct, you set them burning for 3 turns if they're not already burning. So when you're attacking certain targets, you can set them burning, which is really good, and that obviously synergizes with its normal passive, which lets you deal additional damage to burning targets. The Frost Prince, this is an amulet in Act 2, has a new passive called Cold Air. Ice Knife now explodes with a burst of cold air, stacking encrusted with frost, and knocking them back if they fail the save. The knockback is the exact same as the Arrow of Roaring Thunder. Shield of Scorching Reprisal. When you have 4 or more turns of heat, you reduce damage from projectiles by half, so you're rewarded for keeping your heat stacks high with this setup. Blazer of Benevolence. This is rewarded from Volo, and it has increased armor class to 13. It's a 13 AC light armor. Does that make it good? No, but it's drippy enough that maybe you want to wear it anyway with 13 AC. The Cold Brim Hat has had its once per turn limit on the passive removed, so you can now apply Encrusted with Frost as many times as you, I think it's deal frost damage or cold damage, so this might be ridiculously overpowered. We'll find out. The Seraphic Pugilist Gloves. These are the Radiant Punching Gloves for monks and other unarmed builds, and they were in Act 3, but in kind of an out-of-the-way place. I didn't even know they existed until I started making version 4, but they've been moved to be an optional reward from freeing Aelin, or the Night Song. The Shifting Corpus Ring, this is found on Marcus's body, I believe. The blur spell applied by this lasts for 10 turns, up from 3, at the cost of a bonus action. So it's actually kind of worth using at least once per day. The Flail of Ages, this is an Act 3 flail. The save DC on the different effects used to be 13. They've been increased up to 15 so that you can trigger them more often. The Skybreaker Light Hammer has a weird name considering it used to come with Searing Smite, so I just removed Searing Smite and made a new spell for it called Break the Sky. This new spell is considered a level 3 conjuration spell like Call Lightning. You make a melee weapon attack and call a bolt of lightning, like the spell Call Lightning, in a 3-meter area around your target. All targets within the area of effect make a dex save against your spell save DC to totally avoid the 3d10 lightning damage. Now, importantly, without the Spell Sniper feat, you will also be in that 3-meter radius. Break the Sky has a short rest cooldown, and it works from your main or your offhand. The Susser weapons have also been buffed. They now apply the anti-magic status instead of silence. This prevents magic almost entirely instead of only preventing verbal spellcasting. The DC to apply the effect has also been buffed up to 16, which might be too high, up from 12, and it is a con save. Might be too strong, might get a nerf in the future, might go down to like 14 or something. However, the Susser weapons also cause you to have an anti-magic effect on yourself when you wield them. So if you want to be a Gish, you cannot wield a Susser weapon. But if you're like a Battle Master or a champion, you can be a true anti-mage, which is pretty neat. The Dark Justiciar boots. These boots allow Shadow Step as a free action once per short rest. I didn't actually know these boots existed because I've never done certain story choices with Shadowheart, and these are a reward from doing those choices, and she gets Shadow Step already in her kit, so this is now a free action instead of a bonus action, which is nice. The Amulet of Seluna's Chosen has been giga buffed. This item was basically just Gale food before, but now it grants access to Power Nap once per long rest, which, if you remember, is a potion of angelic reprieve, so it restores your first and second level spell slots, as well as giving you a short rest. It is so good. The Slippery Chain shirt has had a corrected tooltip. The wearer disengages, not the healed creature, and it now works with the Cloak of Cunning Broom, which is pretty nice. All right, we're finally to the actual new items in version 4. Before we jump into the items, I am not going to tell you where you receive these items. If you want to read the screen, it's on the screen. If you want to read the notes, the locations are in the notes, but I'm not going to say it in case you don't want spoilers. First up is the Adamantine Chain. It has the visuals of the Elven Chain with a unique die, and it prevents critical hits, and it reduces your damage taken by 2. It is also a base 14 armor class light armor, meaning the Adamantine Chain is probably a best in slot light armor, either until the end game or all the way through the end game. It's kind of crazy. There is the Elegant Padded Armor. It is a base 15 armor class light armor. It gives you advantage on persuasion checks, and it comes with the passive Dense Padding, which reduces your damage taken by 2. This is a pretty neat one. The Unfinished Ringmail Armor is a 16 AC Ringmail Armor, so if you have 18 armor class, it's a 20 armor class armor, which is pretty good. And it can be combined with the Risky Ring, the Ring of Free Action, Crusher's Ring, the Ring of Jumping, the Ring of Protection, or the Caustic Band to delete the ring but add the passive to the armor. So you can basically add a third ring to your character by wearing the Unfinished Ringmail Armor. Importantly, these rings are all pretty good. You can have your armor give you the effect of the Risky Ring, so you have permanent advantage, or you can do the Ring of Free Action, and now you can't be paralyzed or whatever, right? Or Crusher's Ring, you get extra movement speed from your heavy armor. Ring of Jumping, you get permanent enhanced leap while you have it equipped, so you can get a lot of mobility. The Ring of Protection, you can get another +1 AC and +1 to your saving throws, so it's 21 AC armor potentially. Or the Caustic Band, you just deal extra acid damage. You can add any of those rings to this armor. It will delete the ring and make the armor that. Next up, Half Empty. This is a +1 half plate variant, and it has a passive called Pessimist. You reduce your threshold to critically hit by 2. I actually think it's called Lucky Pessimist, but I don't remember. But the passive is that you reduce your threshold to critically hit by 2, but you reduce your attack rolls by 2 as well. Next up is an armor called Dead Ringer. It is a 14 AC Ringmail armor, which grants Disguise Self with 2 unique disguises. There's a character named Aeana and a character named Damien. While disguised, you reduce all of your damage taken by 1. It's important to know you have to have proficiency with heavy armor to cast the disguises. Next up is another item called the Gloves of Brilliance. This allows you to re-roll the damage of level 1 and level 2 spells cast at the first, second, or third level. So if the level of the spell is level 1 and you upcast it to the third level, you still re-roll the damage. So this is sort of, basically, a half-caster damage-dealing glove. Kind of neat. If you want to deal a bunch of damage as a half-caster, you can re-roll the damage. It's also really good on other casters and makes stuff like Magic Missile kind of cracked, but, you know, it's an option. The Bone Chiller is a new ring, and it grants Bone Chill as a cantrip, and it gives a passive called Chilled to the Bone. Hitting an enemy with Bone Chill applies 2 turns of Encrusted with Frost and deals an additional 1d4 cold damage. Next up, another new ring called a Shiny Thing. This is actually part of the Peasant set that I designed. which is not really a set. You can use it together, but you're probably not going to use it all together. Anyway, it gives Shining Luck, which is just +1 to attack rolls. There's also a Ring of Vigor that gives +2 to Constitution, advantage on concentration saving throws, and you maximize your healing. This is a Giga buffed periaptive wound closure, but it's in the ring slot, and I'm going to let you guess it's probably in Act 3. Next up is a new necklace called Peasant's Charm. It has a passive called A Charming Life. When you land an attack, the enemy makes a DC 12 Charisma saving throw. If they fail, they become charmed for 2 turns. Finally, this is the item that replaces the Diadem of Arcane Synergy in the Creche. I know I said I wasn't going to tell you where they are, but this one makes sense to tell you. Anyway, it is called the Diadem of Arcane Resolve. This gives you advantage on concentration saves, and you gain +1 to your wisdom saving throws through a passive called Arcane Resolve. Okay, that's all the new armors and jewelry and gloves and whatever. Could there be more here? Definitely, but there's not. Instead, I focused a lot on new weapons. So on the next page, we're going to go to the new weapons. First up is a new weapon called the Lightning Rod. This is a magical finesse spear. It is not +1, it is just a spear +0, but it's magical. And as I said, it's finesse. You can use it with your strength or your dexterity, and it comes with a passive called Bolt Suffused. When the wielder is imbued with lightning charges, this weapon has a +1 bonus to attack rolls and damage. There is also a Fisherman's Trident that I made. It is a +1 trident, and it comes with a passive called Fisherman's Net. You gain the ability to throw a net at an enemy to prevent them from moving. This just applies the ensnared effect, just like when a Kuatoa throws a net at you. It's actually the same exact ability. Next up is another weapon. I'm actually going to tell you where this one is because it's kind of cool. This is a weapon called Blinding Light, and it is chosen from the rewards for saving Aelin. Just like there's the Moonlight Glaive and the Seraphic Pugilist gloves like I told you about earlier, there's also a longbow called Blinding Light, a +2 longbow with a passive called Extraordinary Light. When you attack with this weapon, you apply 2 turns of Radiating Orb to yourself. And you also deal additional damage with this bow equal to your Radiating Orb turns. So that's going to be generally up to +4. Sometimes it'll be +5 after you've used 1 shot that round. But remember, Sharpshooter doesn't exist. So this is kind of like a version of Sharpshooter. You deal up to 5 extra damage. It can also be a very good competitor with the Titan String Bow. You don't have to build any strength. You just get your 5 extra damage, but you're going to take an attack penalty as part of that. It's a very neat ability. It's also important to know Blinding Light deals all radiant damage and has a +1d4 radiant modifier on it. Speaking of rewards for saving Aelin, another option is a quarterstaff called the Quarter Moon. It is a +2 quarterstaff with a 1d4 radiant damage modifier. It also deals all radiant damage, and it comes with a bonus +1 to attack rolls and to spell save DCs with spells. It also has its own spell called Lunar Radiance. It is a Sunbeam variant, so it's that line of radiant damage that hurts enemies and heals allies. You are required to be in combat to cast it, and it has a once per long rest cooldown. Finally, from the rewards for saving Aelin is a +2 rapier that deals all radiant damage and has an additional 1d4 radiant modifier, so that's true for all of the weapons. And it's a rapier called Pierce the Night. It comes with a rush attack spell that summons Moonfire, a 2d10 radiant moonbeam on yourself that deals damage to other creatures. I think it only summons it for like 2 turns, and I think it has like a per combat cooldown, but it's really cool because you can just like rush through a bunch of enemies, and the moonbeam is summoned on yourself, and you will hit them with the attack, and you'll deal the radiant damage all at the same time. It's really, really neat. Okay, Spider's Bite is a +1 short bow that deals all poison damage, and it unlocks the weapon cantrip Toxic Barrage. It also adds an additional +1 poison damage to your Toxic Barrage. There is the Swamp Man's Axe. It is a +1 hand axe that also deals +1d4 poison damage. So you can go like axe and staff pretty early on. I'll say it's in Act 1, which is really neat. Next up is the Shield Bow, which is a +2 longbow, and it comes with the passive called Shield Bow, which just gives you +1 armor class. There is the Ice Sickle, which is a +1 sickle deals all cold damage, but it's a 1d4 weapon, so, not very high. But it unlocks the weapon cantrip Blizzard Blitz and increases all of your cold damage by 2. So it is a +1 sickle, but it is a +1 sickle with a +2 cold damage on it. So it's actually 1d4 +3 damage, which is a pretty decent weapon. It's not bad. Continuing on, there is the Peasant's Defense, part of the Peasant set that I made. It is a +2 light crossbow, and you are considered proficient while wielding it. Actually, I don't remember if I made that part. I do know it grants a per turn bonus action rally. There's no cooldown on it. You can just rally whoever you want, whenever you want, as long as you got a bonus action. Fickle Sickle. This is a +2 sickle, and it has the Fickle passive, which is a -2 penalty to hit and a +3 additional damage. It also deals 1d8 base damage. So it's 1d8 +3. It's actually 1d8 +5 damage, but it has no bonus to hit. There is Chop's Cleaver, and I bet you can guess where that is. It is a +1 cleaver. It deals 1d6 base damage, and it comes with the weapon action Chop, which deals literally double damage with no cooldown. That one might be a little strong, but also good luck in that fight. The Serrated Goblin Scimitar. This is a +1 Goblin Scimitar, and it has the passive from Hunter's Dagger, which means you apply the effect that when they move, they take 2 points of piercing damage or whatever. Serrated Goblin Scimitar. Keeping it going, there is the Dampwood Club, which is a +1 tree branch club with a permanent shillelagh effect. There's another item called Pick Your Brain. It is a +2 war pick, and it has a 1d6 psychic damage rider on it. There is the Throwing Knife, which is a +1 dagger, and it has the returning property. There is another combination of items called Breadwinner and Food for Thought. Breadwinner is a +2 light cleaver. It is sold alongside Food for Thought, wherever that is. And when paired with Food for Thought, your melee weapon attacks deal additional damage equal to your Constitution modifier. Food for Thought is a +2 salami, and it grants you Hero's Feast while it's equipped. Last two new weapons, there is the Reflex Hammer. This is a +2 light hammer, which has a vanilla model and is just not really used anywhere. And it deals 1d4 additional force damage. So it's a 2d4 weapon +2, right? And if the target fails a DC 14 strength saving throw, they fall prone. The Reflex Hammer is goated. I'm using it in my current run with Karlak as a dual wielding barbarian, and oh my gosh, is it so good. When you opportunity attack someone and you hit them with the Reflex Hammer and they go prone and they just lose their turn, oh my gosh, it's insane. The Well-Oiled Club is the last new weapon, and it's a surprise where you'll find it. Have fun. All it is a +2 club. That's it. All right, we are on to the last of the changes from Chocolate Edition version 4, and then I've got to edit this 4-hour-long video. And this is a pretty cool one that is going to get some expansion in the future as I think of more things. So this is the Pocket Charm system, and these are a new type of item in Chocolate Edition, sort of. Pocket Charms are like the Resonance Stone or the Susser Flower Blossom, which work from your inventory. Generally speaking, the new Pocket Charms are reworks of vanilla items that were otherwise not at all worth equipping. There are a few new ones, however, and I plan to make some more as I think of them. So think of items like the Resonance Stone, which just does something while it just sits in your inventory. It doesn't matter if you have it equipped, you actually can't equip it, but you have this aura around you, right? Or the Susser Bloom Flower, you also just have an aura around you. There are items in the game which you can use from your inventory that you cannot equip, and these are kind of like that now. Most of them, like I said, are vanilla reworks, and let's just jump into them. So the Broken Wand of Fireballs is kind of like a Pocket Charm. You could have it in your inventory and you'd double click it or whatever, or you'd use it, and it would let you cast a fireball. Well, now that continues. Once the wand is broken, you can still use it to cast Fireball once per short rest. So it is a true Pocket Charm. It is an extra fireball. It's an extra 3 to 4 fireballs a day. I guess if you have 4 bards, it's 7 fireballs a day. But whatever, right? Broken Wand of Fireballs now gets to use Fireball more often. Chimera's Locket. This is obviously a vanilla item, and it grants Minor Illusion instead of Dancing Lights, which was just terrible. And it does that while just sitting in your inventory. If you've picked it up, you might have to switch it to someone else's inventory and then back to yours in order to get it. They're a little goofy with how the conditions work sometimes. They've got a few known issues, but you just get Minor Illusion for having Chimera's Locket on your person. The Tarnished Charm, this is, I think, dropped from Anti-Ethel at some point, and it just gives you like advantage on death saving throws. It's a really crappy effect, but the Fey Life passive from it now works from your inventory. The Amulet of the Unworthy, this is that amulet that gives you resistance to like slashing damage or piercing damage or something, and vulnerability to bludgeoning. Those have been changed. The vulnerability and resistance now work from your inventory, not just when you equip it, but from your inventory. And the reason for this is so that you can reverse pickpocket it as a strategy. So to better synergize with this strategy, though, the resistance has been changed to bludgeoning, and the vulnerability has been changed to slashing, so that rogues can make use of this, because they're the most likely to pickpocket and then sneak attack, right? The Amulet of Lost Voices. You can now speak with the dead with the amulet in your inventory. Uncovered Mysteries, this is Detect Thoughts. You can do that with just having the amulet in your inventory. The Envoy's Amulet. This now just gives you +2 to your persuasion checks while the item is in your inventory. The Champion's Chain now gives you +2 to intimidation checks while the item is just in your inventory. So that's the basic idea. You only have to have these items in your pocket and they will do their effects. Importantly, there is a weird bug where if you send the item to camp, the condition will persist on your character. So for the Amulet of the Unworthy, I think you need to manually place it in the camp chest if you don't want the effect on yourself. Or you can sell it, I think. I think either of those options of removing it from your inventory will work, or you can drop it. Those all work, I think. But if you just send it to camp, the condition persists on you, like you still have it with you, and you will just be permanently vulnerable to bludgeoning damage. So keep that in mind. Okay, but there are a couple of new ones as well. Just 2 of them at the moment. The first one is called the Transmuter's Lost Stone. I'm not going to tell you where you get it, but you'll get it pretty early. It grants access to Transmuter's Stone Throw cantrip that we talked about earlier. It's a 1d12 cantrip plus your intelligence modifier. And finally, there is the Cracked Soul Coin, which comes with the passive Tormented Soul. It generates 3 turns of heat every turn while in combat. Most of the time. Sometimes it doesn't, and I don't know why. I do need to do some bug fixing, but when it works really well because, as I said, heat is giga buffed. It's so disgustingly good. The Thermodynamo Axe, because heat is buffed, is actually like really good because you can spend your heat convergence turns from Cracked Soul Coin, hit with the weapon, you generate more turns of heat, and then you spend your convergence on the next turn, assuming you have a fire damage rider. It's so good. It's so good. All right, everyone, that is finally it. That is all of the changes for Chocolate Edition version 4 and all of the changes before that. It's been a pleasure. Thank you to Kelbreaker and Nightingale, the Excuser tier members, for supporting the channel. Thank you to everyone who has tipped for Chocolate Edition version 4. I never hit the $300. Whatever. If you want to support, feel free. I would really appreciate it. I will start working on version 5 in several months after I've spent a few months bug fixing and possibly adding some more items to version 4. Thank you everyone so much for watching. If you made it this far, type the word donkey in the comments, just so I know, because this is a long video. Thank you everyone. Enjoy the mod. I'll see you all in the next excuse.